This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch or get 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, then please consider becoming a patron and joining us at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Do you want to start it?
Okay. Wow! Hello, everybody!
And
Welcome.
hello.
Hello. Hey, Richard. It's me, AJ.
Oh, man, why are you talking like that?
I'm excited, dude. This is a big moment.
This is a very big moment for the podcast.
Imagine if I just talked like this for the whole show.
I'd love it.
You'd love it?
Oh, it's dying down a little bit now.
Oh, it's gone. I've lost it.
Oh my gosh, you're just getting deeper and deeper.
Oh, gosh.
What have I done?
My voice starts going into like reverse, and I'm just like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I that wasn't backwards, but
well, you're not. I mean, like tonally backwards, which doesn't really make a lot of sense now.
Right? Yeah, the things you're saying are really backwards. You're just like, you're not very woke.
Yeah. I'm saying real politically incorrect, like antiquated, using antiquated terms and things. It's not quite racism, but it's like saying Oriental. You know, it's like it's not. You wouldn't go as far as to like call someone out for being racist, but it is an antiquated term.
Yeah, like in the movie The Mule with Clint Eastwood.
Does he use it in that?
Well, he keeps on like, he like runs into the gang dykes on bikes,
right?
And he's like, as he's walking away, he's just like, "Oh, you dykes have fun," and they look at him like, what? And then later on, he's like, these 2 African American people have had a flat tire, and they don't know how to, because they're millennials, they don't know how to change a tire, but Clint Eastwood does, and he comes up to them, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I can change it for you." And then he's like, it's good helping out you Negro folk." And they were like, "Oh, we don't really."
Does the movie do this on purpose, or is Clint Eastwood as a creative, like, talent kind of just not aware that he shouldn't?
Well, and then so they're like, "Oh, we don't really say it anymore," and he's like, "Oh, sorry, like, what's the correct term?" And they're like, "Oh, just black is fine," and he's like, "Oh, okay." And that's it. Like, so there's those 2. I think there might be a third one, but it's like just those 2 things, and it doesn't like add anything to the film. It's never paid off.
Yeah.
He never gets into trouble because of using antiquated terms. He never, like, his character doesn't really grow by having learned these things. There's just, like, 2, like, slice of life. Oh, he knows not to use that word now.
Right. Well, good. I'm glad that Clint Eastwood has at least learned those 2 things across his life.
And it has 2 threesomes in that movie.
You're giving me way more of the plot of The Mule than I thought I was going to get at the start of this episode.
Yeah. It's a very strange movie.
Interesting.
And coincidentally, and this is real bad for me as a movie guide to admit, it's the only film with Clint Eastwood in it I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I've seen maybe 3, so I don't know.
Well, it was one of those things I was like, yeah, surely I've seen ones he's directed that actually, he wasn't in.
You know what? I think I've only seen 1 as well, but that 1 is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So
yeah, you've seen Gran Torino, haven't you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Have you?
Well, look at us. Just a couple of Clint Eastwood only having seen 1 movie guys.
Yeah, and that's the name of this podcast, or at least it was until we decided to go for more broad appeal and call it the Cult Popture Podcast instead. So welcome along to the Cult Popture Podcast.
I'm going to strive to make sure that by the time this episode is released, that's no longer true. Interesting. So people are like, I can't believe Richard's only seen 1. And I'll be like, actually, I've seen $1 Million Baby.
Good. I like your motivation. I like your stamina and your determination. I think those are admirable traits, and probably traits that Clint Eastwood himself would really like.
I mean, I'm a traitor. Why
did I bring up?
Traitor.
I'm trying to get away from talking about Clint Eastwood, and I just mentioned him again like an idiot.
Yeah.
What's the perfect segue here to talk about Marvel from Clint Eastwood?
Clint.
American Sniper.
Clint Howard.
Bradley Cooper.
Howard Stark. Tony Stark. Iron Man.
Wow. Welcome, everybody, to film franchise Fortnights. We got there in the end. Here it is. Film Franchise Fortnights, where we watch a different film franchise every fortnight, but for the next 3 weeks, including this week, that won't exactly be true.
No, it will not.
Suckers. You just clicking on our false advertising.
So we're covering the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Which is the franchise of all franchises in a lot of ways. Like, we talked about this when we did the Lord of the Rings trilogy a few weeks back, that like when we started this podcast, we wanted to focus on your Beethovens and your earbuds, your dog-related or otherwise seldom discussed franchises, because there's less content out there in the podcast sphere about Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants 2 than there is about Captain America, for example. You know, and yet here we are, we're doing what I'm sure 1,000 other podcasts are doing in the world at the moment, and discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But we have more credence too, because we know those dog franchises. We've done the hard yards. Hey, all you other podcasts with small audiences talking about Marvel, where were you when we were talking about Beethoven? Where were you when we were talking about Land Before Time? You know, we deserve this. We deserve to be talking about franchises that are popular now, because we've talked about so many of the ones that aren't popular.
Yeah, exactly. We've earned this. This is our little treat. This is our treat.
That's more work than if we didn't do it.
I wanted to look up like a fun little fact about like what our most popular franchise is based on Google search results.
Yeah.
Like when you search the name of it, how many results come up. So if you search MCU, you get 118 million results.
Yeah. Did you look through all of them?
No, just seeing how many
right. Okay.
there are. Like, so what's our most talked about franchise? If you search Marvel, you get 994 million. And then I thought Lord of the Rings actually might be quite a popular one because it's been around for so long. That's 337 million. Just for fun, as a point of reference, Star Wars has 1.2 billion results.
And we haven't covered that yet.
We haven't, but I just wanted to, because you'd say that's probably the most popular franchise of all time. You'd say, yeah. But do you know what the Back to the Future has 2.7 billion results when you
That's really cool.
Yeah. That's like twice as many hits for Back to the Future as there are for Star Wars.
That's really interesting. I wonder why.
That is so interesting.
I'm trying to figure out why that would be, and I can't land on it.
Yeah, because Star Wars is so much shorter as well. And there's more films, and it's got way more lore. Hey, no, that's cool. So anyway, start off the podcast with that fun fact. That's our only randomly placed piece of trivia this episode, because we've got so much we want to talk about, and I forgot to write any others.
I've got another one.
Oh, good.
Should I bring it up now? Poorly placed useless statistics. This is our third franchise, and I'm not going to say the name of the other two, but this is our third franchise in which Stellan Skarsgård ends up betraying the main characters in some way. Whether it's through mind control. He becomes a bad guy by the end of at least one of these movies.
Stellan Skarsgård does actions which directly hinder the heroes.
This is our third franchise in which he's done that. And as a fun little side note to that as well, all three of those franchises where Stellan Skarsgård acts against the heroes of the story are all franchises in which more than one movie of the series has came out in the same year. So, you know what I mean? Like, all of them have multiple movies that released in the same year.
Yes, that's very good piece of trivia.
That's a long piece of trivia, and a very strange typecast to realise for Stellan Skarsgård that I'm not sure if anyone else would have realised. I can't wait to find another example where he's done this.
Fuck yeah, man. All right, well, anyway, that was... If you're still with us, so we're here to talk about today. We're going to be talking because, fortunately for us, the 21 film strong at the time of recording, Marvel Cinematic Universe has been conveniently segmented into what they call phases. And so we're here today to talk about phase 1, as you might be able to tell from the title of this episode.
And this is all to go toward like the road to end game.
Yeah.
This is our road to
Are we going to
Endgame.
call that?
Well, I'm sure 100 other places are calling it that, but that's essentially what this is. We're doing this in the lead up to Avengers Endgame.
Should we call this one
second
Beginning Game?
Beginning
and then
game.
the second episode can be called
Middle Game.
Middle Game.
Yeah.
Act 2 Game.
Yeah.
So Phase 1 was 6 films. Started in 2008 with Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll run through what the films we have, and then we can talk about them a little bit more in depth.
Sweet.
So we had Iron Man 2008, followed 6 weeks later by The Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Then Iron Man 2 in 2010, Thor in 2011, Captain America the First Avenger in 2011, and Marvel's The Avengers in 2012.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like, the Marvel, for some reason, if a franchise is going to release more than one film a year, for some reason they do them closer to it. They don't do them like one end of the year and the other end of the year, like which is how I probably would have said we should do it if I was Kevin Feige, who's a name we'll mention a lot probably in the next 3 podcasts.
Yeah, but also you have to keep in mind, I guess, that there is like it's less so now than 10 years ago, but there is like a blockbuster season.
True. Yeah.
And then Deadpool kind of proved that movies can do really well in February. And now the blockbuster season has extended and keeps extending. Okay. And also Star Wars, Avatar, and Titanic did really well in December. So there is a spot for tentpole releases there.
Yeah. Man, I've got when we were preparing for this, when I was watching these movies, I was like, there's so much I have to say for next episode. There's so much I want to say in reflection of Phase 1.
Right.
You know? But I don't know if I should bring it up on the actual Phase 1 episode, but I guess we'll find that out shortly.
Yeah, I'm the same as well. Like, I've so much... Like, we could literally talk about Marvel for 24 hours.
Yeah, and this is a way to restrict ourselves and... Yeah.
Because we do. Like, we have a group chat with Rowan, who's a friend of the podcast, and we literally just talk about Marvel. Unless 48 Hours is coming up, we just talk about Marvel.
Yeah.
And sometimes Star Wars.
Yeah.
And yeah, we very rarely repeat ourselves. Actually, we repeat ourselves all the time. And I'm sure we will across these 3 episodes. But you know what?
Yeah.
Stuff you.
We're just 2 lowly podcasters talking about Marvel, desperate to try and come up with some hot takes that no one else has said.
Yeah, that's the thing about Marvel, and also something like Star Wars and even Lord of the Rings to a lesser extent. But it's so hard, especially in podcast form, to make what you're saying be fresh. And I'm sure we're not going to come up with any original opinions.
That's why we do obscure franchises as opposed to these big ones.
Yeah, because if we come up with any opinion about a puppy star Xmas, it's the first opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let's dive straight into these films without further ado. Much like The Simpsons.
Okay,
I've definitely made that joke before.
Okay, let's keep driving through.
So 2008, we had Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau. AJ, what is Iron Man about?
All right, I've written these down to try and streamline the effects. So these are my authored synopses.
They're like a page each.
No, they're not. Tony Stark is a world-famous weapons manufacturer who, after getting kidnapped and held hostage by terrorists in Afghanistan, escapes using a robotic suit, which he then perfects back in America to be his Iron Man suit, which he uses to become a superhero and fight to pivot his own company away from manufacturing weapons. There's more to it, but that's
who's the bad guy?
The bad guy is Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, who becomes Ironmonger.
Yeah, that's right. Because I guess that's the easiest way to tell these different movies apart.
Yeah,
you're like, which one's the bad guy, the first one?
Yeah.
So AJ, tell me a little bit about what was your first experience with this film?
This came out. Did this come out after The Dark Knight?
It's like a case of months. Let's have a look.
Right. Well, I remember 2008 when this came out. 2008 was the birth of me being a movies guy. That was when I first got really into movies through friends who were also into movies. I was always into storytelling, but 2008 was the year I started being serious about it, basically. And I remember when The Dark Knight came out. I loved it. Still one of my favorite movies to this day. When Iron Man came out, I remember thinking, why is Robert Downey Jr. playing a superhero? And I remember thinking he was so old, which is such a strange opinion for my 15-year-old brain to have, because what it came from was the only other Robert Downey Jr. movie I'd seen was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and all I knew about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was that it was Robert Downey Jr.'s comeback after being like a drug addict or whatever between this and Ally McBeal, in which he was a main character.
Yeah.
And so I guess in my mind, I figured that if you were to have a comeback from a bender, like a years-long bender, that meant you were old? Like, that meant you were an old man?
It's like, yeah. If you had enough time to fall out of to get into the limelight, fall out of it, and then come back, and that was a few years ago.
Yeah. Thank you for articulating that for me. That's a very good way to put it. I was ready for you to be like, why does that make him old? But no, you actually put that into words better than I did. And I think especially because my image of Robert Downey Jr. was from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where he's quite a weak, but charming but weak character. And now he's Tony Stark, where he's like the human rendition of the word cocky, it was hard for me to see him as anyone but the character in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and now it's hard to see him as anyone other than Tony Stark, which is interesting.
Even when you go back and watch Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, you're like, there's Tony pretending to this. For the record, it was about 2 months before Dark Knight.
There you go. So yeah, I did not see Iron Man 1 in the cinemas, I don't think. I was like, nah, whatever. And then I caught it on DVD or something, and I was like, I couldn't have been more wrong. I loved Iron Man when I first saw it. I had a big Iron Man poster in my room. I bought the DVD. As much fanship
as you can do when you're that age. The two main things when you're 14.
Yeah, I loved Iron Man. I thought it was such a cool movie, and I got really into it. And that's my experience growing up with Iron Man.
I was aware of Iron Man, like the character, to some extent, mainly through, I've spoken about this before, but I had that like big Spider-Man encyclopedia that I got out from the library a few times, and so that was kind of my introduction to comic books, because I multiple times had tried to get into comic books, and I was met with your stereotypical comic book guy who tells me, I can't get into that. I remember one time, I can't remember what the chick. One of them was X-Man, who is like was one in the X-Men comics, and the other one I can't remember who it was. But a friend of mine was real into comic books, and he found out what his two favorite characters were, or like what his favorite. And he said X-Man and someone else. And I went to a comic book store and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for comics for a friend. Like anything with X-Man or this other person in it." And he was like, well, first of all, those two characters would never cross over because they take place in separate universes. And I'm like I said, it's pretty,
And secondly, it's X-Men, not X-Man. And then you got him. Then you had him. You're like, you've fallen into my trap.
Yeah, so that was a bummer. And so that's why I've never actually really gotten into like actually I love comic book lore, but I don't really read comic books. And because now it's like it feels like it's way too hard to get into, and I know like that's a problem a lot of people have, and you just need to dive in. But
I'm distinctly uninterested in getting into comics, though. I just don't think
I prefer to just read Wikipedia articles.
Yeah, after I saw The Dark Knight, I had maybe a 6-month stint where I bought a bunch of Batman graphic novels, and I think graphic novels are probably the better way to get into comics because they're the standalone kind of things, and often they feel like they're written better than your comics, and a lot of comics are actually get turned into graphic novels afterwards. So I was into specifically Batman comics for maybe 6 months to a year after seeing The Dark Knight, but and I faced similar prejudices from people who didn't.
It's really hard.
You can't just watch The Dark Knight and be into Batman, and it's like, why not?
Yeah. like comic books are like. In my experience, comic book stores are like one of the only stores that actively seem to hate getting customers.
Yeah.
Like they want long-term customers, but they don't want anyone to turn into them.
It's
because
sacrificial.
when Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, everyone all of a sudden wants to read up on who Guardians of the Galaxy are. They're like, oh, posers.
Yeah.
But it's like, how does anyone fucking get into anything? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, my experience with Iron Man, I remember seeing it twice in the cinemas. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
And I waited to the end for the post-credit scene. Blew my mind. And I also remember that I overheard in my maths class, some guys talking about this movie, and I was like, hey, you guys talking about Iron Man? And then that guy ended up becoming my best friend.
Oh, that's awesome. Similar thing with The Dark Knight for me.
Yeah.
I had two very close best friends in 2008 who I attribute our love of The Dark Knight and furthermore, movies in general to be the reason why we loved each other so much.
So that's my experience with Iron Man, and then I was fully like right on board.
Yeah,
with not quite as on board with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as you might think, and like judging by what I'm like now, and we'll get to that more when we get to the end of Phase 1. But yeah, I fucking loved this film. I remember watching the trailer over and over again.
Yeah,
because it's a really cool trailer.
Yeah,
but yeah, so that's my experience with Iron Man. So what would you say? You obviously thought pretty highly of it.
Yeah, man.
What do you reckon it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Got to be like 95.
Pretty close, 93.
93.
And so we've got a few different ways of ranking.
Yeah.
The thing. So I had a look and see in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe how everything ranks in on Rotten Tomatoes. There's also Letterboxd, which we use. We've done our own rankings of Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you can also like buy user rating on Letterboxd as well. So on Rotten Tomatoes, this is the second highest in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal. Now, AJ, where did you rank this? Because you have a famous MCU ranking.
I think I need to explain this as if you've never heard of me or Letterboxd or the MCU.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe not those last two.
Or this podcast.
So, we use Letterboxd. I mainly use it just because ranking things is fun. And I feel like this is I need to explain my relationship with the MCU before I explain, or as I explain this. So basically, most of these movies, out of the 21 movies that have been released so far, I've seen 90% of them once, right?
Yeah.
And including I will save it for the Phase 2 episode, but my relationship with Captain America 2 and Thor 2 is the reason for where some of those movies may be placed. This is all to say that if I read you my old cinematic universe ranking based off the memories with like, it's tilted where the more recent ones are higher up because I've seen them more recently. If I read you this ranking, listeners, and you get furious, I won't even defend it. Like, it's
well,
not,
we don't need to read each other's entire ranking.
Right. This is not me trying to, like, you can find it letterboxd.com/Alexidus and look for my MCU ranking. This is not me being vehement in where my rankings are. This was very, maybe I'll put this one here. So, my ranking is one that is subject to change, which is why I've also started a new ranking as we cover it for this podcast, where we called the AJ's Marvel Cinematic Universe Ranking Redux.
Very cool, AJ.
Yeah.
So where did you rank Iron Man in your original ranking?
In my original, I ranked it. So this is with everyone, not just Phase 1.
Yeah.
In my original, I ranked it third. My third favorite. Yeah.
Very cool. I ranked it second.
Very cool.
So that's where we sort of think Iron Man lies. So what do you reckon? Let's talk about this. What makes Iron Man so good?
Iron Man is good because it didn't know what it was setting up. It benefits from being the only movie in the series that, by virtue of it being what it was, didn't have any ulterior motives, didn't have any it didn't even have Disney backing it, so there was no situation in which a studio could manipulate, because Iron Man's technically an indie film, is that correct?
Yeah, so it was made by Marvel as an independent studio and then distributed by Paramount Pictures.
And so this is the in a lot of ways, this is the purest, for obvious reasons, the purest MCU film, where it's just trying to be a superhero film. And and the grand spectrum of superhero films, it's one of the first, obviously the Batman and Superman movies came out in the 80s and 90s, but this was like...
And 70s.
Yeah, true. And this was the first, like, post-Spider-Man 3... This is a very specific niche, but it's the first post-Spider-Man 3 superhero movie that wasn't something like The Dark Knight, which kind of abandoned being a superhero movie in favor of being a real movie about superheroes. The Dark Knight is my favorite superhero movie, but it feels disingenuous to rank it as such, because it's more like a excellent piece of filmmaking that happens to be about superheroes.
Yeah. And the movie as well was famously had a pretty loose, like, shooting. The film was improvised.
Oh,
They had a very loose script, and they kind of workshop. So they showed up to work every day and were like, fuck, should we write this scene we're shooting? And they would just feel it out. And it has a really good feel. And I think the relationships in the film benefit for that.
Yeah.
A lot. You have, and the character of Tony Stark is one that's very, free, like kind of says what's on his mind, and and so that works really well for that character. And Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is one of the like famous good casting,
good
kind of things, like
perfectly adequate casting.
Perfect castings, really. Yeah. So you look on any fucking Reddit list of like what actor was so perfect for their role, and it's the top answer is always Robert Downey Jr. It just says Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say every time.
Yeah.
And then someone will reply to that and be like, I also, for my money's worth, I also just want to add J.K. Simmons as JJJ. And then someone replies to that and says like, yeah, they should just keep him if they reboot it for the MCU.
Yeah.
And then someone will reply to that and be like, nah, did you see that Photoshop of Terry Crews as JJJ?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that. And then someone will be like, haha, Ice Cube is J. Jonah Jameson. Anyway.
And then in a similar thread on the same day, a new sequel will be announced, and someone will say the first comment will be to name of film, to name of film. As a parody of Too Fast, Too Furious. And I'm fucking sick of that joke. And I commented on Reddit. I was like, I'm sick of seeing this joke. And it got downvoted. And I was like, fine, you fuckers. Stay in your, like, purgatory of the same fucking joke over and over again.
Yeah. The other one that, if we're talking about Reddit things that grind our gears, the other one is whenever people get really up in arms about the we only use 10% of our brains thing.
Yep.
Fuck, it's the same comments every time. Like, I can suspend disbelief in this film, but when Lucy tried to tell me that if we only use 10% of our brains, we turn into a superhero of the fucking whatever. And then people are like, what? She, like, fucking flies and shit in that movie. It's like, yeah, but the one thing they got factually incorrect pisses me off.
Yeah.
And then someone goes, it's like saying you only use 1/3 of a traffic light. And then someone goes, ha ha ha, that's a great analogy. I'd never think of how efficient we could be if we used 100%. Anyway.
There's a joke in here about later criticisms of the MCU being samey and repeating the same template, and I can't quite reach it. I can't quite word what that joke is, but it is there. It exists.
Yeah. Just know that we're aware of
We're aware the joke is there, so don't make it yourself. It's our joke.
That's mine. Hands off. So yeah, Robert Downey Jr. As I started that tangent, Robert Downey Jr. is often considered one of the best casting decisions of all time. And I saw an interview with Kevin Feige, and he was talking about how, at the time, because obviously Robert Downey Jr. is one of, if not the biggest movie star in the world now because of Iron Man. And he was the highest paid star for a long time as well. And Kevin Feige was saying, nowadays with the studio and there's all these decisions that had to be made, but we were an indie studio back then. We didn't hire Robert Downey Jr., the biggest movie star in the world. Back then, he was just one of the best actors in the world, and we were able to, get him on board. And I found that really interesting. I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily one of the best actors in the world. He's actually a very good actor, and he probably is being pigeonholed as like a superhero actor now, but he's a very talented guy.
Yeah.
But did you know he wasn't always...
Here we go.
Here we go. So all of the casting decisions pretty much I have who could have almost played it.
Yeah.
So back when they were trying to do a Iron Man film in like the 90s, Nicolas Cage was
God, he shows up a lot in these conversations, doesn't he? I feel like Nicolas Cage was almost every superhero.
Yeah. Wow.
Good. I don't want Nicolas Cage to be...
list.
Actually, he would be all right. He'd probably be okay as Iron Man.
Well, another one that I actually think would be all right, but probably not for the Marvel Cinematic Universe as it is, but Tom Cruise as well.
That's the one I'd heard.
Yeah, he's like the famous kind of one.
I can't imagine him adopting the look of Tony Stark, though.
With the goatee.
Yeah, I can't imagine Tom Cruise looking at all good with that look.
Has Tom Cruise ever sported a beard?
I cannot think of one example. He doesn't suit a beard. He doesn't suit beards or romantic leads in his films.
Yeah. Oh, like he had long hair and a beard in what was it, Last Samurai?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, I would quite like. I'd be quite curious to see the alternate universe where he played Tony Stark.
Yeah,
because dude's a bona fide movie star. Like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That would the MCU have happened with such an expensive cast member being?
Yeah, that's the other thing as well. So the other options were, and these ones are just like, they always say, oh, these people were looked at as well. Clive Owen, Sam Rockwell, Hugh Jackman, and Timothy Olyphant.
Yeah, I could see most of them, I think.
And then also Rachel McAdams turned down Pepper Potts, who was Jon Favreau's first choice.
Interesting.
And then she regretted the decision fucking 8 years later and started Doctor Strange.
Yep. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Here's a confession about me. I love Tony Stark. Maybe specifically Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of him. I don't really read Iron Man comics, so I'm not familiar enough with who the character is outside of RDJ's portrayal. But I think in terms of, if we're talking like blockbuster film, I rank Tony Stark as a character up there with someone like Captain Jack Sparrow or Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, he's one of my favorite examples of character on film. And the reason for that, and the reason why, and we'll probably get to this more later, that for a long time in the MCU, Tony Stark was the only character I liked. Like, well into phase 2, he was the only one I gave a shit about. Was because I really enjoy... So I really enjoy... I think I've talked about this before. I really enjoy the fish out of water character arc. When you put a character who's used to something and place them in a unfamiliar situation. And I know that both Captain America and Thor are probably the more obvious ones to go to for that. But what I like about Tony is that he's a fish out of water in the sense that he's a wacky, jokey, cynical, sarcastic dude who is then put in situations where he has to save the world or save the people he loves. And I really, really enjoy someone who doesn't take life seriously having to take life seriously. I think that's a really compelling character, a place to put a character, and especially a place to put an actor. It's very interesting to see how an actor deals with that sort of thing. And so that, I think, is why I like Tony Stark so much, is that he's layered and interesting, and he's kind of an asshole, but then he's also, like, in the world of the film, he's actually doing amazing things for technology and like clean energy and stuff like that. So I love that his cockiness mixed with he's actually genuinely a good person and a good guy and a protagonist and making the world a better place, which is part of the arguments. I think a lot of the more interesting ideas that the MCU broaches are catalysts of Tony Stark being the type of person he is.
Cool, man.
Yeah, man. I love Tony Stark.
Well, another character that I know you love is the Incredible Hulk. So this came out, the next month.
Yeah.
About 6 weeks later. It was directed by Louis Leterrier.
Mm-hmm.
And what's this one about, mate?
This is the easiest one to write about because it's basically just the plot of Incredible Hulk. like as a concept. So Bruce Banner, after being mutated by gamma radiation, is a wanted fugitive and must constantly outrun Homeland security while also dealing with his hulking green Jekyll-Hyde alter ego, who he mutates into when he gets angry. So
Cool.
That's if you've never heard of the Incredible Hulk.
And who's the villain?
The villain is Abomination, played by Tim Roth, who injects
Blonsky?
himself. Elon Blonsky, who injects himself with a similar, similar kind of stuff that made Bruce Banner Hulk, but it turns him into like a more. I don't know what the difference is really. He seems more intelligent, but that's about it. It seems like he doesn't become a different person, which is what happens with Bruce Banner and Hulk.
So now you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah,
I know. I love Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, but Mark Ruffalo's not in this movie, is he, AJ?
No, this stars Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. This is... So phase 1 of the MCU is in a lot of ways the most inconsistent with the rest of the series for obvious reasons, like growing pains and stuff. But this is the most explicit example of growing pains in a franchise, you know. And like obviously if you haven't seen it, I made a video about this a few months back called Marvel's Forgotten Movie, where I sort of talk about how the Incredible Hulk fits in with the MCU and why it doesn't why there haven't been any sequels. It's the only MCU film that either doesn't have a sequel or isn't going to get one soon. And I think the Incredible Hulk is a fascinating little sore thumb of a film in an otherwise very clean and very templated and consistent MCU.
So what do you reckon this one has on Rotten Teas?
Maybe like mid-70s?
67%.
Wow, that's pretty low.
It's the second lowest rated MCU film.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know if I disagree, but I certainly used to disagree.
Yeah, that's interesting because you famously
stop saying famously. It's not
defended the shit out of this film and said, and I quote, that it's one of 2008's best films.
When did I say that?
No, you didn't. Anyway,
Has
your opinion changed?
I don't know. I think a similar thing happened with Iron Man. I didn't see this till it was on DVD, and I think when you're 15, like the Incredible Hulk's fucking awesome, regardless of how good the story is, right? So,
how many times did you seen it?
I've seen the Incredible Hulk a few times.
Oh, okay, right,
yeah. And I don't know. I really like a lot of this film, or at least I did. I acknowledge that it's not as good as others, but it was a while before in fact, it was only rewatching it now that I was actually like consciously ranking it lower than other films in the series. But I certainly don't think it's a terrible film. I think it's probably better than 67. But yeah, where did I rank it on my original ranking?
Yeah,
I ranked this. Oh, this is the first instance of like there is one comment on my Letterboxd page for my MCU ranking. It's from someone named Daniel Voice who wrote, "This is so fucking wrong. I hate you." So I ranked Incredible Hulk 14th out of 21, which is very high for a movie with that critical reception surrounding it.
I ranked this 19th. For the record.
So very
third to last. But it's also like I've always said like everything above 19, I'm like, this is real good.
Yeah,
and then 20 and 21, I'm just like, eh.
Yeah, it's so funny, man. That like. Just my undying love for this movie, but I'm not even that passionate about it. I had this on DVD. This is one of the only other I only ever bought 3 MCU films on DVD, and this is one of them. So I don't know. I thought this was a fun movie. Very cool. Well, I don't buy DVDs anymore, so...
Well, I buy Blu-rays. And actually, I think I did have this on DVD as well. And I remember, I think this was like the last DVD that I upgraded to Blu-ray.
Right.
When I was like, I want to have all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe on Blu-ray. And it means every Christmas, I can just say, just get me the most recent Marvel films that I haven't bought. Yeah. So I haven't bought one for myself in ages.
But yeah, like, none of the characters from... The Incredible Hulk turn up again except for Thunderbolt Ross, which is weird.
Thunderbolt Ross.
It's so weird because... And obviously Bruce Banner, but he's played by a different guy.
Yeah, and there's actually could be one other one. Do you want to talk about that?
What is it? I don't know.
Do you remember? So there's the bit in the movie where Edward Norton's like, "Hey man, I got to deliver this cheese pizza upstairs."
Yeah.
And Lou Ferrigno's like, "Oh, I'll let you through because I'm the original Hulk." And then, do you remember the actor who he delivers the pizza to?
No.
Martin Starr from Freaks and Geeks.
Yes.
Who's also Spider-Man's teacher.
Is it the same character?
Is it the same character? We don't know. But interestingly, Martin Starr, if you read the novelization of The Incredible Hulk, Martin Starr's character is revealed to be Amadeus Cho, who who in the comics is the first Asian American character to take on the mantle of the Hulk. And he's played by Martin Starr in the movies.
Yeah, Martin Starr being like blazing trails for Asian representation in blockbuster movies everywhere.
Yeah, but so that's quite funny.
There's another big way in which The Incredible Hulk is inconsistent with the rest of the series.
Motherfucking tell.
I will motherfucking tell, motherfucker. So at the end of... It's so hot in my room, dude. I'm like melting.
It's hot in here as well. I've got a fan pointed at me, but it's not on because obviously it would affect, and it's like...
Towards the end of the film... we meet Samuel Stearns, played by Tim Blake Nelson, and at the end, or towards the end of the movie, after he's helped, what's his name? Elon Musk Blonsky? Emil Blonsky. After he helps Emil become Abomination, he like gets knocked over, and a bit of the serum or whatever it is like drips on his head, and you see it sort of growing out, and he kind of like grins towards the camera. And in the comics, Samuel Stearns is a villain known as the Leader. And when I made the video on The Incredible Hulk, I talked about how like it straight up ends on a cliffhanger that's never resolved. And then one of the comments revealed to me that, but there's actually an MCU canon comic in which Black Widow kills the Leader. Or
it doesn't kill, it captures.
Yeah, captures the Leader.
So in canon, the Leader is currently in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody. Which...
Continuity, you could just make another appearance of him in the film and they would outright, like, you know, write over the continuity. So I don't quite accept that as being a satisfying conclusion.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
Well, it's not really a case of that, because it's more like the MCU are very particular about... We talked about this on the Disney Plus episode about continuity flowing downward. So, like, the implications of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are not reflected in the MCU. It doesn't go upwards. It doesn't go from TV shows up to movies, but it does go movies down to TV shows. Yeah. And even furthermore, I'd say it flows down into tie-in comics, which, you know what I mean? So you wouldn't... What I'm getting at is you wouldn't signpost that the Leader's going to be in a future film if they knew they were only going to wrap it up in a comic. So to me, it still is like a somewhat of a cliffhanger because they teased it in film. Yeah,
that's more they knew they weren't going to make a sequel, and so they tied off that loose end.
Yeah,
but there is... It's like how... did you ever watch like the Lost webisodes?
Yeah.
And how one of them has like a big reveal and it's never addressed in the show.
What was the reveal?
That Christian Shepherd like found Vincent first.
Right.
That like, because it's from Vincent's point of view, the dog. Yeah. And he like runs into Christian Shepherd, who's like, all right, off you go, you have work to do. And then he goes and wakes up Jack at the start of the pilot.
Yeah.
And it's like, interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, a little bit of Lost trivia there for any listeners. Any fans of Lost?
This film is just so weird. It's like, it's the closest the MCU has ever come to any like semblance of a failure. The types of failures you see constantly with every other cinematic universe.
But so another interesting thing about this film is that we had a Hulk film not too long before it. Ang Lee directed a Hulk film, and this film, sort of trailblazing at the time, isn't really even though it's like the first one, it's not really an origin story.
Yeah,
it kind of glosses over his origin story in the first one. Not in the first one, in the opening credits montage. And yeah, it almost is like the first Ang Lee's Hulk is canon to this one. And
well, it started out that way.
Yeah, when developing it, they referred to it as a requel of Ang Lee's Hulk.
Oh, I love it.
Sequel, part reboot. So it's like it's a new continuity, but it's presuming you've seen the 2003 one,
which I haven't.
Yeah, well, it's terrible. It's literally. I mean, it's hard to say now because I've watched some of the garbage films for this podcast.
Yeah,
but for a long time, it was the worst movie I'd ever seen. And then I saw Disaster Movie and Transformers 2, and I classed those three as like the three worst movies I've ever seen.
Interesting that you've also said on pod before that you loved the Fantastic Four movies, and people mention the original Fantastic Four movies in the same breath as Ang Lee's Hulk, I think.
Yeah, well, no, it's like the thing about, and I still stand by that because I remember I was 10 when Ang Lee's Hulk came out, and I walked out of it and I was like, it's too long and it's not very funny. But no, I actually remember like because it was for a friend's birthday party or something like that, and my parents, mum and dad were like, "Oh, how was the movie?" And I was like, it was too serious, and I didn't like that there were no moments of levity, and there was absolutely no humor in the film whatsoever. Which I get that like it's going for a more serious tone, but like real life is funny. Funny things happen in real life, so even in these serious films, you usually have some moments of levity. And I remember the film not having any of those. It may do that. Then they went over my head, but it's takes itself too seriously. And I saw a video the other day that was like defeating the shit out of it, and I was like, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
I mean, it could be good.
The thing that I dislike Ang Lee's Hulk for is that I think presumably that's why we have that like very non-committal opening sequence of the Incredible Hulk, the MCU's Incredible Hulk, where it kind of goes over the origin in a requely kind of way that makes you feel like you should know this, but in case you haven't, because technically this is a new continuity, here's how Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk. And I think that opening montage is the worst part of the movie, because it's...
Really? I think it's great. I think it's one of the best decisions the film makes.
No, I disagree. I think well, first of all, I think it's too much information to dump in a way if you really want your movie to be standalone, which I know they didn't, but you know, like these movies you shouldn't have had to have seen or read supplementary material to understand. But
did you
movies.
pick up on what was happening?
I did, but what I'm more saying is that later on,
then it did its job.
No, but I think it's poorly made. It's cheesy and it's hammy and it disrupts the flow of the film. I think it'd have been way cooler if it had just started in, where's it start? Like Brazil or something like that.
Yeah, South America.
Yeah. Because later on in the film, Bruce Banner returns to the lab, and when he's there, you see some of the same shots from the montage at the beginning, and I think that just should have been where they put that scene. I think opening it with that is way less it's got a lot less tact than just being like, here's this guy who's on the run. Why is he on the run? And then, oh my god, he's the Incredible Hulk. And then, later on you see those origins when he returns to the lab. I think that would have been a better way to do it. Yeah,
there was an original opening to the film, which was, and it's referenced in the Avengers actually, is Edward Norton drives out to the polar ice, I don't know, somewhere icy, and grabs a gun, sticks it in his mouth, pulls the trigger, and then hulks out and survives the shot. And then he like smashes the ice, and as the ice like ripples up, you can see Captain America frozen in part of it.
Is that seen online anywhere?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Really?
It's yeah.
Is it good?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a pretty dark and moody start, but the
that sounds so much cooler to me.
You can see Captain America thing. It's like there's a blur on one of the things, which is in the shape of a man. It's not like, oh, there's a shield. But yeah, and then in the Avengers, Mark Ruffalo says, I put a like gun on my mouth, and the other guy spit out a bullet, or something like that. And so it's like that scene actually happened. We're just not showing it in the movie.
That would be
also as Mark Ruffalo, not Edward Norton.
I can just imagine how much cooler the film would have been had it started with that, like as a cold open. Because that tells you everything you need to know. You don't need to know about gamma radiation at that point in the film. You just need to know this is the curse that this character lives with. And I think the reason this film is considered by many to be the worst of the MCU is because of those growing pains of it being like the remnants of a past film and then later being like all but removed from canon. You know, like it could have been way cooler. They could have cast it if Mark Ruffalo had been Bruce Banner in that film, that would have been so much cooler as well. Like, obviously that's not a decision they made wrong or whatever, but man, I love Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. And
apparently he was Leterrier's original choice. I think I said that already. But there is something interesting. So this film does tie into the wider MCU as well, and its final scene, often called a post-credit scene, but it's not actually a post-credit scene.
Which also makes it the only MCU film that doesn't have a post-credit scene.
Yeah, well, if we're saying post, because Age of Ultron has a mid-credit scene, but not a post-credit scene.
Yeah, but you know, you wouldn't. If you didn't know what a post-credit scene was, you wouldn't even mention the credits if you're describing the scene from Incredible Hulk.
So Thunderbolt Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross is drinking at a bar, and then a mysterious figure shows up, and it's Tony Stark. It's Tony Stark, and he says, "We're putting a team together." Now, something very interesting happened to me.
What?
I saw a short film. So there's the short film, The Consultant. So Marvel do these one-shot films, which are canon, and they don't usually involve like main characters. But included with Thor is one called The Consultant, and found this very interesting. I said I was going to tell you about it. So it's because Thor, Iron Man 2, and The Incredible Hulk all take place in the same week, and they're all like kind of happening concurrently. But The Consultant is about Agent Coulson, who is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and also Agent Jasper Sitwell, who's another agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he ends up being a bad guy, whatever. Talking about the Avengers Initiative, and they're like, oh, the higher-ups above S.H.I.E.L.D., they real want Blonsky for the Avengers. And they're like, wait, but what about that whole mess he made of like downtown New York or whatever? And they were like, oh, they've blamed that on Bruce Banner. So the government thinks that Bruce Banner's evil and Blonsky, the Abomination, is the good guy. So like, you need to get him on the Avengers. And then they go, oh, well, like, do you reckon Ross would let us have him? And they're like, nah, we can't. And it's like, well, we need to officially extend this invitation. And they go, okay, well, then what can we do? They're like, what if we send someone so annoying that Thunderbolt, that Ross will definitely say no to him? And then they're like, okay, but who can we find that's that annoying? And then it cut to Tony Stark walking to the bar and being like, we're putting together a team.
Wow. So he's actually referring to...
He's actually asking for Blonsky, knowing that he'll say no to him. And then that's why in, like, the Avengers, that kind of scene, you know, that he hasn't been asked to join the team and all that shit. Yeah. Interesting,
yeah, that's really cool. That's good. That's a good retcon. You know, we've talked about bad retcons before. That's actually a really good one.
Yeah, it's a funny little joke. You know, just being like, oh, look. Yeah.
Something else that I like about what in this interim between Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2, that I don't think this appears in any other MCU. Actually, no, it does appear in Iron Man 2, but I'll just say it now anyway. So we talk a lot about titles on this podcast, and we're not going to do that right now, but when we do talk about titles, sometimes we talk about what I've coined a title bomb, where they say the name of the movie in the movie. I say I've coined it that because no one else calls it a title bomb, and while I think that makes me cooler, I think the rest of the world disagrees. So early superhero movies, early new superhero movies, right? So starting from
mid-2000s,
Spider-Man onwards or whatever, something like that. Yeah. They did a similar thing to title bombs where they find an in-universe reason for these characters to have these absurd monikers they go by. And they're treated very much like a title bomb. You know what I mean? So in Iron Man, there's a part where Obadiah Stane says to Tony, we're ironmongers, Tony, you know? And that's his villain's name, is Ironmonger. and it's not really done. He doesn't call himself Ironmonger when he's done this. And the earliest example I can think of this is in The Dark Knight, when Harvey Dent is referred to as having a nickname when he outed all of his the dirty cops, and when he first mentions that I heard I had a different name down at the Gotham City Police Department.
Yeah, it's like my least favorite part of that movie.
Oh, real? And then
it's so on the nose. Like it's like someone came and looked at the script and was like, no, you have to get him to say Two-Face. And they'd already shot the entire movie and they only had that one scene they could put it in.
So what happens later on is when he becomes Two-Face, he's like, what was that name they had for me down at the precinct? And he's like, Harvey Two-Face. And like, yeah, sure. But it still is interesting.
He's like, say that again.
to see how they... Because when you make a movie, you are dealing with an inherently more realistic portrayal than a comic book. And so in a comic book, you can call all your characters these funny, wacky names, and that's just the world we accept. Whereas in a movie that's grounded in reality, it's harder to accept that. So in Incredible Hulk, we get it twice when two witnesses are describing when they saw Hulk like around the university when he like had that big
Hulk
fight.
Smash, yeah.
Yeah, where they it's before that when they're talking about him and they say like he was like this huge Hulk, and that's the first time you hear the word Hulk in the movie. And then later he says Hulk Smash. But then also when
no, but I'm saying the students saw Hulk Smash.
Yeah, right. When Blonsky is asking Samuel Stearns to inject him with the gamma stuff or whatever it is, he's like, that would be an abomination. And again, it's like, these are ways where, because the Abomination, the character, while he may have like a longer life in the ongoing comic series, he's only in these movies once, and he's presumably gone afterwards. So it's like a way to be like, here is the cosmic way in which this character is referred to by the name, and it happens again in Iron Man 2 with War Machine, but I don't remember it happening anywhere else in the series after Iron Man 2, but I could be wrong.
Speaking of Iron Man 2,
what's that?
We're going to talk about it right now.
Oh my gosh.
Iron Man 2 came out 2010, so they skipped 2009, so interestingly 2009 is the only year without an Avengers MCU film, sorry.
Yeah, and it's also in keeping with what I said before about Phase 1 being the most inconsistent of all the phases. This is the only phase where we get a sequel. A straight up sequel to a character's movie in the same phase as the original. So
interesting.
Iron Man is the only character. Did you not know that? I thought that would have come to your mind immediately. Maybe I'm the only one who thinks about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Iron Man 2 is the only time we get the first and second, or the any form of that in a phase.
Very cool.
Which I guess makes sense when he's your money bag character, your honeypot. You probably want to like keep reminding people he's there.
Yeah. So AJ, what is Iron Man 2 about?
All right. So Tony Stark is hard at work trying to defend his Iron Man technology as his personal property from the US government, insisting that the technology is years away from being in the hands of America's enemies. Unfortunately, with the help of a rival tech mogul and national traitor named Justin Hammer, the technology is replicated by Ivan Vanko, or Whiplash, who is a jilted Russian physicist and ex-con who wants revenge on Stark Industries for firing and ruining the life of his once employed father. Is that correct? Does that sound good? Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned Justin Hammer?
Yeah, I feel like Iron Man 2 is one of the hardest. It's one of the most interim feeling MCU films.
Because it's part sequel to Iron Man 2 and part prequel to the Avengers.
Yeah.
Like it does the most kind of setup work.
Yeah.
And so as a result, it does feel kind of messy, and a lot of people consider it to be quite bad. What do you reckon it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
It'll be higher than Incredible Hulk, wouldn't it? So maybe like 70?
73. But it is the third lowest ranked. So there's only 2 films ranked worse than it. One of them is The Incredible Hulk. So I ranked this 15th on my overall Marvel ranking.
One. Yep, I ranked... I keep clicking on the Redux one, which we're saving till the end. I ranked this 13th, so one above Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
But that being said, I actually quite like this movie.
Yeah, so do I. So do I.
It's got I want to say it's one of the it feels hand in hand with something like Civil War for me, in terms of toe in hand, with something like Civil War for me in terms of like Marvel films that are about bureaucracy. Like it's a very grown up movie. It's a movie that has a lot of adult things in it. And similar, like how like Phantom Menace is about trade federations. Ugh. Like Iron Man 2 is about an arms race, you know? Like it's I think this is a very cool movie, very interesting movie.
I think it definitely is messy and it's not as good as the first one.
No.
But there's so much good stuff in this film.
Yeah.
Like there's so many because we were messaging each other and Rowan while watching this, and there were so many times where I'm like, fuck, this bit's cool.
Yeah.
And but I think the film as a whole is probably not as good as the sum of its parts. We do get introduced to Black Widow in this film, Scarlett Johansson's character, who's only like 24 in this movie, which is insane.
Wow.
Or like 25.
Wow.
She's so successful.
What do you mean?
Like she's in an Iron Man.
I'm kidding. I know what you mean.
But yeah, she wasn't always going to play her as well. That little fun thing. So
I've heard that we've talked about this before.
I think we may have, yes, when we did our like actors who haven't been cast yet. But basically, like Emily Blunt signed one of those deals where it's like your next 3 films will be with like whatever company, and so she got the call from Marvel. They're like, we want you to play Black Widow. And then she was like, oh, can I please get out of my contract? And they were like, no, and just for asking, you're going to star in Gulliver's Travels.
Wow.
So she did Gulliver's Travels instead of playing Black Widow in the MCU. Poor thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson's pretty good in it, though, so I don't know if it's a tragedy.
She's very successful.
Yeah, so what is there to say about this film? What is it that you like about it?
I don't know, rather than just like, I don't know, other than being like, oh, this scene's cool.
This scene's
real cool. I do want to say as well, one thing, what do you think of the Spider-Man cameo in this film?
So that's one of the kids.
Yeah.
There's a kid who has an Iron Man helmet on who...
Yeah, all the drones break loose and they're trying to kill everyone. Yeah. And there's little kids wearing an Iron Man mask and he puts his hand up as to Iron Man the drone, and then the real Iron Man stands next to him and blows him up.
Yeah, and
Kevin Feige, who's the head of the MCU, John Watts, who directed Spider-Man: Homecoming, and Tom Holland, who would eventually play Spider-Man in the MCU, have all confirmed that kid is Spider-Man.
I don't know. It's a hard thing to have any strong feelings about, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I've spoken at length about, like, I'm not a huge fan of it, and I've spoken at length about how I feel about, like, Word of God canon.
Yeah.
So
canon that's not backed up in the story itself. So for this to be proper canon, the next Spider-Man movie would have to acknowledge that this little kid
if he was like, I remember at Stark Expo when you saved my life or whatever, that would be fine. But yeah, I don't like when people are just like, oh yeah. I mean, if it's like subtext, that's okay. Yeah. But when they're like, oh, sure, this fan theories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So if I was to put into words why it's not as good as Iron Man 1, and it's interesting because I've seen Iron Man 1 so many times that watching Iron Man 2, which I've seen maybe twice for this podcast, and part of me was like, this is new, or this feels new, so therefore part of me was tempted very briefly to be like, Iron Man 2's better than Iron Man 1. But it's not, and I can tell it's not. But I think it comes down to just that unfocused nature of it, that it's about so many different things and it's juggling so many different balls and putting on so many different hats.
Yeah.
But it is a very good way to sequel the Iron Man story. And I think that it feels like it's been a while since we've talked about this, but like one of my favorite underrated, no one thinks it's better than the first one except for me, sequels is Ghostbusters 2, which I remember I can write a thesis on why Ghostbusters 2 works as a sequel, in terms of like what a sequel should do. But probably the purest example of a good sequel I think out there is Spider-Man 2, and how people talk about why Spider-Man 2 is good because it builds on what the first one sets up in every way, and it's like, this is where we left our character at the end of the first one, and then the second one is an exploration of that character further through further struggles and interesting dilemmas that you would face being that character. And I think Iron Man 2 does really good with this. I think it is logical that something like the US government would try and privatize Iron Man's technology, and things like that. And I think it is interesting to see Tony Stark become kind of an alcoholic throughout it. And like, I really like that scene where he's DJing in the Iron Man suit and he's drunk. And it's like, these are really cool ways of seeing the Tony Stark character in Crisis, as I kind of talked about before. I think because I enjoy watching the Tony Stark character in unfamiliar situations, seeing him be a drunk mess is one of those situations. Like, one of my favorite shots of this movie is when he's hanging out inside the giant donut statue on top of the donut.
Yeah, it's not just your favorite; it's the best shot in the movie.
Yeah, and it's like, this is what Iron Man 2 is. It's about a man who's losing,
hanging out in the donut.
Yeah, he's losing things. He's losing what makes him special. And if Iron Man 1's kind of philosophy or mantra was, "I am Iron Man. I am going to stand in the face of everything I've built and become a protector of the world instead of an attacker of the world," then Iron Man 2 is the logical follow through of that line of thought. That when you deem yourself as a private protector, you will get attacked by the government for it, and you will have your technology try to be replicated by competitors, and that will take a personal toll.
Yeah,
and so I think it's a good movie. I straight up think Iron Man 2 is a really good sequel.
I love Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
So I guess what you're saying is don't do those things Iron Man did, because those things will happen.
What do you mean?
Don't make an iron suit. The government will come after it.
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying that with great power comes great responsibility. And Iron Man 2 is the Tony Stark equivalent of Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. But I think the main thing this one messes up is it's very much as the prequel to the Avengers stuff, because it's like an hour into the film, Nick Fury shows up and he's like, "Hey, we've got some setup to do for the Avengers." Yeah. Like, the film's not about that until then. It's
like how The Hobbit 3 is clearly like the rest of The Hobbit. Like, this feels the Iron Man 2 is like a casserole of your last few nights dinners, and this is important, so we've got to put it somewhere, and it's too big for a post-credit scene, so we got to put it in one of the movies as main plot, because really the only place that scenes like that belong is in an Avengers movie, but we hadn't got one yet. So yeah. One thing I always find weird about this film is that Justin Theroux wrote it. Yeah. Like, Justin Theroux, the actor he's in Leftovers, he's the master code breaker in The Last Jedi. He has a tiny cameo on that. He's Louis Theroux's cousin. Is that right? Yeah, what's like his biggest claim to fame, I guess? He's Jennifer Aniston's partner. Yeah, he's an actor, I guess. I don't know if he has had a big claim to fame. I don't think he's that famous. Yeah, but like, when you say like Justin Theroux, you'd be like Justin Theroux from... yeah. But anyway, he wrote it. He'd written Tropic Thunder, and Robert Downey Jr. was like, "Oh, you should hire this guy." So that's how he got the job. Yeah. But Shane Black gave some advice on the script, apparently. Oh, cool. Shane Black, who wrote and directed. Did he write Iron Man 3? He directed Iron Man 3 and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Yeah. And The Nice Guys and The Predator. Yeah. The Predator. But yeah, also, speaking of, because there's the Spider-Man cameo, there's a few cameos in this film. Elon Musk just shows up randomly, and he's like, "Oh, I've got a great idea for like an electric jet or something." Yeah, and it's like, Elon, what are you doing, mate? And then DJ AM is as well, Adam Goldstein. Yeah. He's in this, and he died in a plane crash between filming it and it coming out. I think that the reason Justin Theroux writing it is such an interesting thing is because it's rare now that like an actor will contribute to a film from a creative standpoint and it be as kind of critically unremembered as Iron Man 2. You know, like Jordan Peele wrote Get Out and it was like this revolutionary social thriller, and like, you know, even the movies Ben Stiller have written have been like, oh wow, Ben Stiller was capable of that, and like, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And this is an example, or Kumail Nanjiani writing The Big Sick, or Bo Burnham writing 8th Grade. It's when you have a recognizable name in the acting world turn to writing, more often than not, you're impressed by it. And with Justin Theroux writing Iron Man 2, because it's such an unnotable movie in the grand scheme of things, it's like the strange little piece of trivia about it.
Yeah, I think as well, probably the other reason it's weird is that he's not in it.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. Or he doesn't direct it or whatever.
He was in Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, he was.
And he's in quite a lot actually. He's the evil DJ in Zoolander, which he also wrote, I'm pretty sure. Or he wrote the second one, at least. Yeah, he wrote the second one.
He's real good at writing sequels.
Yeah, well, he's real good at writing like bad sequels.
Not that this is that bad of a movie.
Yeah, but critically not beloved. So I guess we move on now. It feels like we spoke of... So this podcast can be very long. If you haven't looked at how long it's got to go, don't, because you'll just be freaked out.
You'll stop listening.
They're only going to get longer, these MCU ones. So next up...
we did the maths before, and if Phase 3 is as long as we're anticipating...
It's going to be like 6 hours long. And part of us love the idea of releasing a 6-hour podcast. So fucking strap in.
Strap on in.
Strap on.
Very good.
Very, very sexy.
Imagine like your wife comes out, it's your wedding night, and she's dressed in this lingerie, and it's like real hot, and you're like, very sexy.
AJ, I think you need to be more aware of how racy you're being.
How racist I'm being.
How racy you're being.
Oh, right.
Of how far is too far versus...
sorry, iTunes reviewers. We shouldn't make fun of them. They gave us a review. We'll be discussing that. We've already discussed that. This. Whoops! There's a fun podcast blooper. Is that we've recorded this episode before last week's the episode you would have been listening to last week. So,
whoop-de frickin' do.
Whoop-de-do. That's interesting, isn't it?
So, next movie that came out was Thor. Came out in 2011, and this film is another one that's a lot of people shit all over. Mm-hmm. You being one of those people.
Yeah.
And this was directed by Kenneth Branagh. And what's it about, mate?
Okay, so Thor is a Norse god living in Asgard who is stripped of his signature hammer.
You say this like it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not ridiculous, but you're just like, Thor's a Norse god?
You say that was such a moment of cognitive dissonance because I said something that is ridiculous or fantastical, and you're like, you say that's like it's ridiculous, and I was like, yeah, and my mind was like, but it is ridiculous. it is like fantastical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I meant like you're not treating it with respect.
Yeah, no, like or a Norse god would live in Asgard. Like, that's not ridiculous. All right, so Thor obviously is a Norse god living in Asgard. And he is stripped of his signature hammer, Mjolnir, and banished to Earth by his father/king Odin after trying to reignite a dormant war with the ice giants. While banished, however, Thor's evil brother Loki discovers he's actually an ice giant himself and was taken by Odin as a baby and tries to take over Asgard. While making friends and lovers on Earth, Thor discovers his brother's evil plot and returns to Asgard to defeat him and prove his worth.
Very cool. Very sexy, AJ.
Yeah, very sexy.
Yeah, so what do you reckon this had on the old RT?
71.
77. So it's the
higher
fifth lowest.
Than Iron Man 2. Yep. Fuck off.
It's
not as good as Iron Man 2, straight up.
And I ranked Thor 16th, one below Iron Man 2.
I ranked Thor 19th, third to last. This, again, I want to re-emphasize this is my old ranking when I'd seen Thor once. And my relationship with seeing the first Thor movie was the Avengers was coming out, and me and my friends hadn't seen Thor or Captain America, so we watched them both in one day in a hot bedroom. Like, we had to watch them on the TV in my bedroom during the day, and it was real hot. And so, you know what I mean? Like,
it was real hot.
It was real hot.
Very hot.
It was very sexy. And so I think Thor is a boring movie at the best of times.
It's a Thoring movie.
It's a Thoring movie at the best of times. And to watch it in that environment didn't help it much. So maybe it'll be ranked higher this time, but who knows?
Interesting. Yeah, I had a very similar experience. So I didn't see Iron Man 2, Thor, or Captain America in the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And I distinctly remember driving in a car past Riccarton Mall talking about the Avengers versus Dark Knight Rises, which were both coming out in the same year, and saying, I'm not really even excited for the Avengers. Like, I don't even know if I'll see the Avengers because I haven't seen the last few. And, like, it just looks too, like, light and colourful, whereas, like, you know, I'm about the dark grit of something like The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
And but then I was going to go to the Avengers anyway on, say, like a Saturday after it came out. And then my friend cancelled. And so I was like, fuck, I'm just going to go buy all of Phase 1 on Blu-ray. And then I just went and bought like the 5 Blu-rays and watched Thor and Captain America before going to see them. And I was like, why do people tell me not to see these? Like, these are real good. I really like the first Thor. I think it's it's objectively the weakest in Phase 1, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But
I'd agree with that.
It's there's so much I like about it. Like, I love the idea of, like, Marvel, they often claim, you know, their films are like genre films. So the one you often hear is like The Winter Soldier is a political thriller, or like Ant-Man's a heist movie. And I really like the idea of, and they do this every now and then, and less so nowadays. But I love the idea of treating Thor as a Shakespearean drama, and getting Kenneth Branagh to direct it.
Yeah, and I like that too. And I think it's just I don't have any problem with, like, the description. If I was to read everything that this movie is about, I don't think I necessarily have a problem with it, but it's the execution. Because what would have been one of my favorite moments in the MCU isn't earned, I feel, and that's the end of the film. Thor destroys the Bifrost, which is
the Rainbow
like
Bridge, yeah.
the Rainbow Bridge, the link to Earth, which and he does it to defeat Loki, but in doing so, he's basically sacrificing his chance to ever see Natalie Portman's character again, with Jane Foster,
who he fell in love with over the last 48 hours.
Yeah, and that's my problem with this movie, is that if they had got something like Mark Webb, who directed 500 Days of Summer and the 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies. Say what you want about Amazing Spider-Man 2, but the chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield in that movie is exceptional. And the love story built is exceptional.
Yeah,
and
but that's also due to the actors as well, because they were dating.
But whatever, like, and good actors should be able to be good enough, right?
Yeah.
And so my problem is that I did not at all buy the love story. So for Thor's, like, distinctly Shakespearean sacrifice of, you know, giving up ever seeing the woman he's in love with for the greater good, it was a swing and a miss for me, because I didn't care about their relationship. If I cared about their relationship, my God, I would have loved this movie. Yeah, but man. I didn't.
I think, and that's heavily due to Natalie Portman wanting to be anywhere else except the set of this film.
Right.
Like, she's one of the actors, because there's a few we'll probably cover as we get to them, but actors that have come out and said, I hated being in a Marvel film.
Right.
They don't like doing, you know, big budget movies for whatever reason, and it really, 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 really shows. I think Natalie Portman delivers a terrible performance, even worse in the sequel.
Right.
And not having her in the third movie is one of the greatest decisions Marvel's ever made. Not that I think she would have come back anyway, but yeah, it's and then Kat Dennings as her sidekick is just annoying. Selvig's quite good. I quite like Alexander Skarsgård.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Stellan Skarsgård, sorry. Alexander Skarsgård almost played Thor. Fun fact.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, Stellan Skarsgård, he's quite good. He's quite...
Yeah.
And there's a very good scene when they get drunk together and then Thor comes home with Selvig over his shoulder and they're like, oh my god, what happened? He's like, we drank, we fought, he made his ancestors proud. That's a great line. Yeah, and the character of Thor has probably been the one that's gone through the most change in the MCU. Like, you look at him in this too, something like Thor Ragnarok or Infinity War. But
and he's also been in the least movies of the like original headlining cast.
Yeah. And oh no, the Hulk's been in less.
Well, I kind of don't count him in distinct Incredible Hulk styles. I don't really count the Incredible Hulk himself. As
Edward Norton's been in the least. But
the big three, I feel you'd agree, are Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. They're the McDonald's, Burger King, and KFC of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
The design of the character isn't amazing.
His blonde eyebrows.
Eyebrows, which Kevin Feige has said is his biggest regret in the MCU.
Wow.
But
it's like the bat nipples of the MCU.
Yeah. I do. There's a lot I really like about this movie. I love the Dutch tilts. Everyone hates them. I love the look of this film, and I love the fish out of water stuff. There's a lot of good comedy in that.
I like this drink, another, and then he smashes the mug on. That's a classic gag.
Yeah, and the one where he goes to the pet shop and he's like, I need a horse, and he's like, we've got birds and cats and dogs. He's like, they don't require one of those large enough to ride. It's a very good line.
I've got a proclamation to make about the MCU as a whole, not just Phase 1. And I was going to save it, but I might as well say it here.
All right. The middle of our discussion about Thor is as good a place as any.
It's about Thor.
Okay, yeah.
When I reflect on my favourite MCU movies, I think I've noted a common theme in them. And that's my favourite MCU movies, for the most part, are the ones where it's either a silly, quote-unquote, main character in a serious story or a serious movie, or a serious character in a quote-unquote silly story. All right? And so the reason I like the Iron Man movies so much is because he's a character who doesn't take life seriously, and in stories where he's got to act very seriously, you know? And something like Thor Ragnarok is my favorite Thor movie and one of my favorite MCU movies, because Thor is a serious character, or a character who takes himself seriously in a silly story. And the reason Thor doesn't quite work for me, I think, is because it's a serious character in a serious movie.
Interesting, yeah. I can believe that. But yeah, this film, again, does a lot of setting up for Avengers and stuff like that. So we see Coulson again, and I like when Thor calls him Son of Cole. But yeah, we meet Hawkeye for the first time.
Yep.
He has a small little cameo in this film. One fun bit of Marvel Comics trivia. Do you know about he uses the alias Dr. Donald Blake at one point, which is Natalie Portman's ex-boyfriend, and he like wears his clothes.
Right.
Well, now Jane Foster, I should say, not Natalie Portman. And you know about who Dr. Donald Blake is?
Do you want me to give a go explaining it and you can correct me?
Yes.
So Donald Blake is Thor's like secret identity, essentially. He's his Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Because the original Thor in the comics like finds Mjolnir and turns into Thor. So when he's not Thor, he's Donald Blake. Is that correct?
Yeah. And if he's not holding his hammer for more than like 30 seconds, he turns back into Dr. Donald Blake. Yeah. So, which is pretty dumb for a character whose main move is throwing his hammer really far.
Sure, yeah.
But so this was when Thor came out, when it was very clear what they were trying to do with setting up a universe.
That's what I was going to say.
And so casting Iron Man, casting the Incredible Hulk was a bit more like casting a normal kind of movie, whereas casting Thor and Captain America were really like, these people have to be the face of our franchise for the next decade,
Yeah.
And so Chris Hemsworth wasn't necessarily their first choice. Guess who their first choice was?
Mark Ruffalo.
No. He's been in a film we've covered very recently on this podcast.
Paul Giamatti.
No.
Barry Bostwick.
One more episode back.
Barry Bostwick. Frankie Muniz. One episode back. Daniel Craig.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, could not see him.
Yeah. He's interesting, right? And then apparently Channing Tatum and Triple H, the wrestler, were talked about. And
I'm not familiar with Triple H's work, but Channing Tatum says the same BDE as Chris Hemsworth. So.
But yeah, I remember when a guy I was studying with in 2011 he was a big fan of comic books, and he said, like, Chris Hemsworth's too small, they need someone like Triple H. Which is interesting because they're like, or like John Cena would be the.
As someone who gave Robert Downey Jr. shit for being too old, I feel like I can't criticize him saying that.
But apparently Charlie Hunnam, Tom Hiddleston, Alexander Skarsgård, and Joel Kinnaman all tested, and you can see Tom Hiddleston's screen test, a clip of it online.
As Thor.
Yeah, as Thor. He's
Holy
got the
cow.
long blonde hair and he's throwing Mjolnir up into the sky.
I cannot see that. He works so well as being like a snidely,
I know,
sneaky man.
And Liam Hemsworth got a call back, and Chris Hemsworth didn't, but then Chris Hemsworth ended up getting the part somehow.
Marvel just like fucking with siblings and making them angry at each other.
And then for Loki, though, this is very interesting. Apparently, at one point, Alan Cumming was set to reprise his role from Son of the Mask.
No, he wasn't.
But when they were developing a Thor film, Jim Carrey was the favourite for Loki.
Yeah.
Tom Hiddleston's so good.
That's interesting because of the obvious connections to the mask there.
Yeah.
That Jim Carrey plays.
Jim Carrey was the favourite for Loki, but that could be like people on Twitter being like, wouldn't it be funny if Jim Carrey, because he plays Loki.
He essentially plays Loki in the mask. Very interesting. I think, God, imagine if Alan Cumming returned and then the mask is like unofficially set in the MCU.
Son of the Mask.
Son of the Mask, specifically. Can we talk about Tom Hiddleston?
No.
Okay.
Go for it.
What Tom Hiddleston is often, or at least Tom Hiddleston's Loki, is often referred to as like Marvel's only good villain for ages.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Because Marvel had a villain
I would
problem.
agree that he was referred to as that for ages, yes.
Yes. What's so good about him? I'm not disagreeing. I just need some convincing.
Well, the other thing about Loki, so one, Tom Hiddleston's very charming. He's a fan favorite of Tumblr girls and stuff like that. He plays a very charming villain. He's very put together,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is always like quite cool to see. But also he was given, so he was in Thor, then wasn't in Captain America, then was in the Avengers, then wasn't in Iron Man 3, and then was in Thor: The Dark World. So across 5 films, he had 3 of those to, prove himself as a great villain. And so, of course, the one that has 3 times as long to pad itself out is going to be the most well-developed one.
Yeah.
For a long time, he was the most well-developed villain. And out of all the Phase 1 villains, he's the one I would bring back for the Avengers as well, because he was played really well. Good chemistry between the two, and I guess the kind of the like trickery sort of side of it as well works really well. As in terms of like villainy, that it's not straight up villainy; it's kind of a bit more fun than that.
It's also a kind of like I feel like in towards Phase 3, Marvel cracked into making all their villains sympathetic. So, in other words, when you know what motivates the lead villains, you kind of agree with it, or you at least understand why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
And I feel like Loki is kind of a precursor to that. He's already kind of a dick to begin with, but then he finds out that he's actually adopted and gets upset. So, yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So that's all I have to say about that.
Fair enough.
Yes, I mean, I guess we'll just move on to Captain America, the First Avenger. We're getting through these ones a lot quicker than we got through the first two. Yeah. And the Mule. So
The Mule is my favorite MCU Phase 1 film.
The Mule.
The Mjolnir.
Meow meow. So Captain America the First Avenger came out in 2011 as well, and it was directed by Joe Johnston, who did The Rocketeer. That was kind of like his audition for this was that. And what's this one about, mate?
All right, so Steve Rogers is a very small but very determined do-gooder during 1940s America who manages to become a soldier in World War II by agreeing to be genetically altered with gamma rays. Is that right? It's the same stuff that got the Hulk, right?
Well, the Hulk was them attempting to recreate Captain America.
Yeah. After becoming a super soldier and donning the mantle of Captain America, which is a whole thing that we'll get into after I describe the story, he goes into battle with Red Skull, who's a similarly genetically altered Nazi, who is trying to get his hands on a powerful artifact that can conquer the world. Do they call it the Tesseract in this film?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So he's trying to get the Tesseract or utilize the Tesseract or whatever it is.
They can make weapons out of it.
Yeah. After defeating Red Skull, Cap sacrifices himself by flying a plane into the ice to prevent it from blowing up New York. He is then frozen and rediscovered and thawed 70 years later.
Very cool.
Which one of these is called Thor? Sorry?
Yeah, so what do you reckon this has on RT?
This would be one of the higher Phase 1 films, I think.
Interesting. So what do you reckon it has?
Maybe like 80?
80. It is 80.
I did it!
So
my whole life I've just wanted to be like you, Richard, and now here I
am. It's the 6th lowest rated film in the MCU.
Fuck.
So
that it's at 80. That's amazing.
So Phase 1 has the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th lowest rated films.
And also like sorry, you said the 2nd. So it's like highs and lows, basically.
Yeah. But it's Captain America is the 3rd highest rated one in Phase 1.
Yeah.
So
where have you put it on your ranking?
Very good point. I put it 9th.
I put it 18th. So I enjoyed it more than Thor.
Yeah, this Captain America the first. So let's talk about what we thought of them, because Captain America the First Avenger is Thor. I like more than most people, but Captain America I fucking love. I love that. To me, this is the most underrated MCU film. Whereas Thor is just like, give it another try, it's not too bad, you know? Whereas like Captain America's like, this is actually a real good film. And I don't know, can't describe why.
It's good podcast content then, isn't it?
No, let me think about it. So I like you, for a long time, Tony Stark was the only character I cared about. And that's why I didn't really care about seeing Thor and Captain America in the cinema. And now, in my rewatch, Steve Rogers' Captain America has almost overtaken Tony as like my favorite character. I like the fact that he's just a guy who really knows the difference between right and wrong, and that he's someone who's the skinny nope. And it's also like it's kind of like, I always say this, that when attractive people have been attractive all their life, they've got really horrible personalities because they've never had to make friends. They just get them. Whereas when someone's attractive, but they puberty hit them really hard, you know, they were awkward or an outcast growing up, they often develop really good personalities, like, you know, people that are funny or whatever, because they had to, you know, have a personality to make friends. And then it's kind of like that this Steve Rogers had this really really good character, and then was given the body and everything to go with it. And the not just the body, but the strength to follow through with his own personal beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely liked this more watching it than I did the first time.
Because it wasn't as hot.
Yeah, it wasn't as hot and sticky. But the same could not be said for the film itself.
Oh my god!
No,
it's like, honestly, the reveal shot of, so he goes in the chamber, he's all scrawny, and then it opens up and he's ripped. That is the fucking sexiest thing in the entire MCU. It's so hot.
I know, but it's not treated as funny as it should have been, I feel.
Well, it's not even funny. It's just like,
I know it's not funny, but it's so ridiculous that it should have been played as a joke. Like, the doors should have opened and you just see his like rippling abs, and then someone like Tommy Lee Jones, who's in this film by the way, is like, he needs to be like, holy shit.
God damn it.
That'd have been hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What do I think of this film? I think Thor is like not my kind of movie. Captain America is like, this is a cool movie, but I'm not going to write home about it. Like, this is mid-tier for me. Like, this is like, there are some things that I really appreciate about it more. I think the so I sort of teased this before when I went through the plot. Like, so he becomes a super soldier, but the army don't want to use him for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, why don't you be like a TV spokesperson? So he goes around like different cities being like a propaganda machine. And that's where he gets the Captain America costume, and that's where he gets the moniker and becomes kind of like a symbol for the war without actually fighting in it.
Yeah.
And then when he tries to do one of his shows for actual soldiers, they chew him out about it because he's not actually doing anything, right? And at that moment, I'm like, this is real good. This is a really satisfying way to justify how a superhero would have such a, you know, kind of cheesy or ridiculous get up in real life. It's probably the MCU's best way at doing that, I think. Best time of justifying the costume.
Yeah, better than Captain Marvel, that's for sure.
And so I really enjoyed that, and I really liked that with that they found a way to work in Golden Age Captain America costume when he's on TV, and then it's not till he becomes an actual soldier that he's wearing like MCU age Captain America costume. So I really like that. I really like the design of Red Skull. He looks as good as he ever could. And that is a good thing in terms of like how to translate that character from the comics to real life. Yeah, I guess in a similar way to Thor, I'm not sold on the love story. I love
the love story.
It is better in Captain America than it is in Thor, but him and Peggy Carter, they're supposed to have one of the most famous and enduring love stories of the MCU. So much so that she got her own TV show, and that he like bangs her daughter later on in life or whatever.
Niece.
But I don't. It doesn't. They never have. They're always on the verge of starting something that it never gets to a point where it becomes an undying love for me.
Yeah, because bloody, what's her name? Natalie Dormer ruins it.
Yeah.
Who's also in this movie.
Yeah, true.
It's so Stanley Tucci.
Yeah. And I feel as though that the if I were Steve Rogers, if I were in his situation, and this girl I quite liked was in my life, and then I got frozen for 70 years and woke up, and that was my new life, I feel like Peggy would be the last thing on my mind. I would get over her pretty fast, is what I'm saying. I don't think they fell in love, is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I do, like, you think about where Steve has been pre-Serum.
Yeah.
And then now it's the first time, and he did have a crush on Peggy before that, and then he got big, and then she was like the first girl to show him attention. And I think that is quite true to life. That
it's not very good though, is it?
No, but I think
it's kind of sad
that a crush would quite quickly turn into that infatuation.
Yeah.
And
it is Hayley Atwell. So
yeah, fuck yeah. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I think I really dig the love story in this film, and I love the last line of this film. When I first saw it, I was like, "Aw," because he wakes up in the future having missed going dancing with Peggy by about 70 years,
Yeah.
And then Samuel Jackson's like, "Oh, is everything all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's just I had a date."
Imagine asking like someone who's been frozen for 70 years if everything's all right.
Yeah.
No. My favorite scene in this film is between Toby Jones and Tommy Lee Jones.
The Joneses.
I feel like Tommy Lee Jones and Anthony Hopkins are like two actors in the MCU that are both kind of above it that you forget were in it.
Yeah, it's well because they're not necessarily above it because they do get some very good actors in these films.
Yeah, true.
But they're like the fact that they were in on phase 1.
Yeah,
like because there's a lot of actors that like by the time it gets to phase 3, it's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, like you're getting Annette Bening on board.
Yeah.
The third biggest star in the world,
the female Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah. But yeah, these ones, it's weird that Tommy Lee Jones would agree to be in Captain America.
Yeah, I don't know what. It seems like so not his style, you know? A couple years after No Country for Old Men, like his like this incredibly personal performance of his, and also coming off like having hated doing Batman Forever where he played Two-Face.
Yeah, but that's because of Jim Carrey.
Yeah, he could not sanction his buffoonery. That's an actual Tommy Lee Jones quote. So there's a scene where Toby Jones is like Red Skull's assistant and the good guys capture him, and so Tommy Lee Jones like brings him a steak and tries to get some information out of him. And I won't like quote it at you, but it's a very cool scene with some very cool little moments in it that I really enjoy.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is great in this movie.
Yeah,
like just his way of speaking is very like fast, but like with a southern drawl.
Yeah.
Well, I was in the Star Spangled Man with a plan. Tell me, Cat, what is your plan today? That's what I love. Yeah, that's a good observation there, AJ.
Thanks, man.
So it seems like Captain America was the hardest one to cast. So apparently Marvel originally wanted either Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt to play Captain America. And at one point they even talked about Matthew McConaughey. And one thing that I did was I went back on Slash Film, which is the website I kind of go to for my movie news, and I went back to their articles from like 2009 and 10 when, like before they'd been cast, before we kind of knew what was really happening with the MCU, and seeing them be like, so apparently they want Matthew McConaughey, but he's a shit actor. He's like never been in anything good. And it's like he's so well respected now, or was for a period of time. He's kind of starting to fall off a little bit. But I remember as well at one point Dane Cook confirmed on his Twitter that he auditioned for Captain America. Kevin and Joe Jonas reportedly auditioned as well, but take that with a grain of salt. Yeah. But so there was a 6-actor shortlist revealed. So they're like, we need a cast. This was when they're like, Captain America will be cast within the next month. It's down to these 6 actors. So Scott Porter, who's from Speed Racer, Mike Vogel, the main guy in Cloverfield, Michael Cassidy, who is in Batman v Superman. He's the one who dies at the start, and Zack Snyder was like, that was Jimmy Olsen. Patrick Fluger, don't know who that is, Chase Crawford from Gossip Girl, Garrett Hedlund, and John Krasinski. So it's down to them. So one of them will be the Captain America. And then they narrowed that down to, because they were like, fuck, we've got too many. They narrowed that down to just Mike Vogel, Garrett Hedlund, Wilson Bethel, Ryan Philippe, Channing Tatum, and Chris Evans.
What's that?
So they narrowed it down to the same amount of people, but with new ones added.
Yeah.
Ryan Philippe, interestingly, is the good cop from Crash. So he almost played another American hero.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So
the only name on there that kind of, for me, that would have worked would be Leo DiCaprio. I think he's the only one I could imagine wearing the suit, I guess. Brad Pitt feels real, like a real weird choice.
Brad Pitt suits it, I reckon.
No, I don't think so. I think he's too old. Or was too old even back then.
Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah. But, and also, John Krasinski, I think, could have worked.
Yeah, maybe.
The thing is, and he's only just starting to now, but, like, as I said before, like, Robert Downey Jr. is, like, the top answer for every, like, perfect casting thing. But, like, Chris Evans does not get enough credit for how perfect he is as Captain America. Like, managing to make not only the scrawny Steve for the first half of the movie believable, but then the super sexy buff one believable, and able to make this like this kind of like weenie do-good be like a really cool character.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. It's good stuff.
And also the fact that, like, before Captain America, everyone was like, oh, they're getting fucking Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four to play Captain America. He's going to be terrible. And then he absolutely nails it. And I'm going to be really sad to see him go from the MCU.
True. Okay. All right. I agree, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I want to be like, yeah, man, he does such a good job. But it's like, in my heart, it doesn't resonate as well as Robert Downey Jr., I guess. But maybe that'll change as I rewatch them all.
Yeah, once you actually like pay attention to the Winter Soldier for the first time.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're in the end game. It's the beginning of the end. It's the end of the beginning. The Avengers. Marvel's The Avengers is actually the official title.
Interesting.
But before we do, AJ, I believe you have a good story about Iron Man 2.
We record like an hour at a time of these shows, right? And then we'll pause and have a little break. And before we started recording again, I was like, I didn't tell my Iron Man 2 story. And Richard was like, oh, do you want to tell that story? And I was like, nah, not really. And now he's started. So I should have told this back when we were talking about it, but I saw Iron Man 2 in the movies. This is one of the only Phase 1 movies I saw at the theater. But one of the reasons I have such a hard time remembering that movie is because I actually went to it with a girl and spent most of the movie trying to make out with her. And
did you?
Kind of. We definitely kissed, but when I tried to what's the delicate way to say this?
French it.
When I tried to French it, it was not met with a reciprocation. It was not reciprocated. And so, because obviously I didn't keep trying and failing. But yeah, so that's how I saw Iron Man 2 for the first time, was very distracted and very preoccupied with something else. It's kind of cursed whenever I've tried to watch the movie again because I don't remember. My first ever memory of Iron Man 2 is not remembering the movie. So now I always forget what it's about before watching it again.
Yeah. Oh well. I actually brought that story up thinking it'd be like, oh man, and then I was just going to start again this hour. But you told the story, so more power to you. You power moved my power move.
Yeah, man. Anything for content.
Anything to establish dominance over you. Yeah, so we have arrived at Marvel's The Avengers, which came out in 2012. It was directed by Joss Whedon. And what do you think this is about?
What do I think it's about?
Yeah.
I think it's about the human condition. So Loki reemerges determined to rule over Earth. He steals the Tesseract, which, if properly activated, will allow passage for an army of aliens known as the Chitauri that he's kind of been talking to come through like a wormhole and decimate planet Earth in order for Loki to conquer it from the scraps. The Avengers are all more or less assembled to fight against Loki, and after some personal issues, workplace conflicts, and a heartbreaking sacrifice, learn to work together in order to blow up the alien fleet and defeat Loki.
Nice. Very well told. Yeah, so what do you think this has on the old Rotten Teas?
Like 90?
92. You've been very close with all your guesses.
Hell yeah, dude.
So it's the fourth highest ranked. And where did you rank this in your MCU ranking?
Number 1, baby. I fucking love this movie, dude.
I ranked it number 7.
Plot twist. I really love this movie. I love Marvel's The Avengers. Yeah. I love it so much.
That's all righto.
And watching it again for this podcast, I was worried that like my love for it might have gone down. But after like half an hour, I was like, this is one of the best blockbusters ever made. Like, I love the Avengers so much.
It's full of, like, fuck yeah moments.
Yeah,
and
it's so good. It's such an enjoyable film. I remember... I am so shocked that this film isn't widely considered to be as much of a landmark as I think it is. Because I remember when I first made that ranking, I got a few people saying that, why would you put Avengers first? They were so mad at me. But it's like, man, the Avengers is like, it is peak generic Marvel. Like, people say it's generic. It's a generic Marvel movie. But it's like, yeah, but it's that formula operating at its highest capacity. Because all my other favorite Marvel movies, aside from Iron Man 1, are the ones that changed up the formula, that spiced it up a bit, whether that's your Thor Ragnaroks with being a bit silly and a bit funny, or, I don't know, something like...
Iron Man 3?
Iron Man 3, again, which, like, a controversial opinion putting that high up the list, which, you know, changes things up. Or even Black Panther, where it's, like, the first one to be serious in a long time. You know, those are some of my favorite Marvel movies. But The Avengers is the purest Marvel, the purest really good Marvel movie. It's the Mama's secret recipe. It's like a perfectly baked apple pie.
Right, yeah. Well, it's the same thing as, yeah, like the first Iron Man, you kind of gloss over, but it's like that. It's the formula you know and love, and it's done at the best. It's why the original Spider-Man still holds up as well. And then it's like this Iron Man and the Avengers. Iron Man is what every, you know, first movie in a superhero franchise is trying to live up to, and the Avengers is what every team-up movie is trying to live up to. And with all the cinematic universes that are starting, they all say, we're going to have an Avengers-style team-up movie. Only one other franchise that I can think of, at least, has got into that film, and that was the Justice League, and it was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And so it like, only one other film studio has managed to even get to the point to attempt it, and they fucked it up, which is a testament to, like, it's not just like some generic shitty blockbuster that any studio can crap out. Only one's managed to do it, and it's a really impressive thing.
And everything about it is such an unlikely win, you know, because when I think the reason I love this movie so much is because it's one of the best examples in my life where my expectations have been completely wrong for a movie, because this came out in 2012. And in 2012, we also got The Amazing Spider-Man, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, and The Dark Knight Rises. All of those movies I would have bet money on being better than The Avengers. Because especially The Dark Knight Rises. Because
even The Amazing Spider-Man?
Yeah, no, well, I guess Amazing Spider-Man at the very least was like an unadulterated story, right? Whereas in my mind, like, making a movie where Thor and Tony Stark share the screen is like trying to cook a steak with jelly beans. Like, they don't work together. I was like, they don't blend together. They're such different stories. Iron Man is like a grounded, techno-futuristic based story, and Thor is like this weird fantasy space adventure. Captain America's like a war movie. I was like, none of these are gonna they're not going to blend together at all. And instead of a steak with jelly beans, this movie's more like, it's like a buffet. It's like a Thanksgiving potluck where like everyone's bought something different and you can try a bit of each. And like sweet potato casserole has marshmallows on it, and that's strange, but it tastes real fucking good. You know, like everything. What I like about this movie, and what people talked about at the time but don't talk about anymore when they talk about Marvel, and it pisses me off, and I'm angry, Richard, is that this movie balances the unbalanceable, or at the time what we would have thought was unbalanceable. It was it just wasn't a sure bet to me that these movies would meld together on film. And they did, and it's my favorite. It's still, at the moment, it's my favorite Marvel movie.
Nice. Yeah. And also, like, getting Joss Whedon to direct it, who...
Oh, it's so good.
Had only directed one film, which was Serenity, the Firefly kind of follow-up. Yeah. And that was 7 years earlier. I think the film... it definitely, and a lot of people, this is one complaint that a lot of people have about the film, but it feels very much like it's directed for TV.
I guess so, but even like people say that about the cinematography of Marvel movies in terms of like none of the shots are creative, but there's plenty of creative shots in this, especially towards the final battle at the end. There's like
so I mean,
some
I think
amazing
that's
shots.
the thing as well, that like everything's either a big wide shot or a close up on someone's face, and those are very. And so you have there's the amazing one shot where it goes between everyone, but that looks very good on your TV screen. And also the entire film, almost bar like one or two scenes, are like very well lit in the daytime kind of thing. Whereas, final battles often have like more shadow. And like, I'm not complaining about either of these things as well. But it is just very, it's the superhero movie you can show your grandma, you know?
I love
it's amazing. It is
so
amazing,
much, man.
And it's a massive achievement in film that people write off as being a generic blockbuster.
Yeah.
But the fact that you think it's a generic blockbuster goes to show how good of a job they did at balancing all these things.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love this movie. There's so many iconic moments. There's so many lines I love in it. Like, I feel like this was Marvel's first foray into the quippy nature that they've later been criticized for.
Well, that's a Joss Whedonism. Like, there's a TV tropes page for like Whedon speak, and it's the way they talk in these movies.
And I'm not going to necessarily defend that. Well, I don't necessarily mind it either in later films.
We'll talk about it more in Age of Ultron, I'm sure.
Yeah, whatever you want to say about Whedon speak, this is just the perfect amount of it. Like, it's not. It's not like I'm looking past it. I'm saying, no, this is an appropriate amount of Whedon speak in a film, if we're going to call it that.
Or Buffy speak.
Yeah. The that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry. I got fucking chills watching that.
Yeah, man.
That's such a. So if you haven't seen the Avengers, when Hulk turns it, like, or the whole movie, he's been talking about how he's managed to keep Hulk at bay, and we never, he's sometimes about to tell his secret, but then he'll get interrupted or whatever, and then he's like, Dr. Banner, now might be a good time for you to get angry when the Chitauri invasion's happening.
Yeah, it's when the giant thing, yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry. And he turns into the Hulk, and it's such a fucking, like, Richard, I've never had sex, but I can't imagine it feels as good as watching Hulk say that line in that movie.
John, I was thinking about something this morning that I was like, man, it's the best feeling in the world. Actually, do you know what it was? I just remember what it was.
It's Hulk.
It was
that's my secret, Cap.
Getting proven right.
Being proven right.
Yeah.
That's such a thing you would think about. Like, I
know. It's such a me thing to say. I was going to post a status about it, just being like, man, getting proven right is actually the best feeling in the world. And that's I've started saying that as my greatest weakness in job interviews and stuff, that I value being right over almost everything else. And I don't know. I don't really think there's a problem with it.
I think there are inherent problems that could arise from it.
Yeah, there are problems that could arise from it, and that I seem like a dick. But
and sometimes you're not right, and you're not willing to back down.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, actually, that's never happened. But yeah. So, like, speaking of iconic moments, it's kind of a weird thing because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is this. It's kind of like The Simpsons, in that it's like, it's just this part of our lives now, and a lot of people do hate on it, but like that 360 shot where it shows our 6 heroes, there is,
and the music like swells up.
Yeah, we don't get like there is a bias towards older films, but that has to be one of the most iconic shots in film history, and that shot sums up this decade of films, I reckon.
Agreed.
And I mean, like, there might be something that outdoes it in Avengers Endgame, and I'm anticipating there will be a version of that shot, but with a lot more heroes. But that is the 2010s cinema, regardless of whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
that sums up.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, regardless of whether you're like, oh, yeah, fucking superhero movies took over this decade, or if you're like, yeah, superhero movies owned this decade,
took over this decade.
Yeah, that shot sums it up perfectly. And it's just.
I also really like about 5 minutes after that shot, it does like a one take that follows all the heroes doing their best,
and some of them are really poorly green screened into it.
Are they? I didn't notice.
Hawkeye looks very out of place.
I'm too in love with this movie to be able to notice what's wrong with it. Another thing I really like in this movie, and again, this is one of those should I save this for a later episode thing, but it kind of finds its origins in this film.
Yeah. And
for why I like the Avengers most of all is so the way that the Chitauri are stopped is that the government launches a nuke to blow up Manhattan, and Nick Fury warns Iron Man, and it's first of all that's a great scene because it gives Nick Fury something tactile to do during the final.
And when he's like, given that it's a stupid ass decision,
yeah, it's so good. And so Iron Man kind of manipulates the missile so that it goes up through the Einstein-Rosen, what's it called? The wormhole.
Wormhole.
The wormhole, and he goes through the portal as it's closing, and then falls back down as it blows up the fleet, and he falls back down through the wormhole as it's closing. And it's first of all, it's such a good climax. It's such a good way of using another problem to solve the other problem, because they're like, now we've got a missile, we've got a nuke coming towards us, but there's a porthole in the sky that we can just throw it through. So I love that. I love the stakes. I love that it's a sacrificial moment for Iron Man.
Yeah, when Captain America's called him out earlier for not saying like, you don't know what it means to make a sacrifice, to lay yourself down on the line, so the other guy can walk over you. Which Cap jumped on a grenade in his movie.
Yeah, so good. But one of the moments that always stuck with me from the Avengers is when we see inside Tony's helmet when he goes through the wormhole, and he's got this look of awe on his face, and it's partly like exhaustion, it's partly like he thinks he's about to die, that kind of thing, as he falls back through it. And I remember when I was like, there's no way you can make Iron Man and Thor exist in the same universe, how I was expecting to. That single moment is like what I point to as what convinced me. And it's at the end of the film, and I was already enjoying it by then. But like that moment of acknowledging how fucking profound it would be to be someone who's been on Earth their entire life, be lost for words going through a wormhole into space, like that's the scene I point to as being what really clinched really convinced me. And if we're going into future phases, that's also why I rank Iron Man 3 higher than probably what a lot of people do, is because it deals with the PTSD of it, whereas a lot of Marvel movies, what am I trying to say here? This is all leading up to I want to make the comment that I thought it was real weird in Infinity War that Peter Parker, a kid from Queens, goes to space, goes to another planet, and it hardly seems to faze him.
Yeah.
And I get you don't have time to show that necessarily, but that is one of my biggest problems with the MCU, if I have any problems with it, is that how people don't seem to react to these life-altering, profound moments. But except for that moment in the Avengers that's paid off in Iron Man 3, I love that. I love it so much.
It's interesting you say it, because I actually think, because it's similar to how before Iron Man 2 came out, they were like, we're going to tackle the demon in a bottle storyline, which is to do with his alcoholism. And it doesn't really, it's like, it's not, Iron Man 2 isn't about his alcoholism,
Yeah.
And then Iron Man 3, I think they didn't lean on the PTSD stuff enough. For me, I would have liked more of it, but then I guess like PTSD is a hard sell in a movie to like be the driving force behind it, and maybe it's in it more than I remember. It has been 4 months since I've watched it, but yeah, that's really interesting. And also, I keep an eye out for this as we keep going. But the shot you're talking about when he's like looking up in awe, is that the only time we see a profile shot from inside his helmet?
I don't remember.
Because, there's the shot, like, every time, Robert Downey Jr. gets paid millions and millions of dollars to have a CGI Iron Man fly around, and then he just films these inserts of his face with the heads-up display. But, yeah, when he's going up into space and he's looking up at this thing in awe, it's profile, it's from the side.
Is it? I don't remember.
And there's a very close-up shot of his eye.
Oh, yes, yeah.
But there's a wider shot where you can still see the heads-up display and it's profile. And just keep an eye out, because I think that might be the only time we see that shot in the entire franchise.
Yeah, I actually quietly, I'd say that's the best moment of the film. It's maybe not the most fuck yeah moment of the film, but for me, it's the most impacting moment of the film.
What's your favorite fuck yeah moment of the film?
Oh, it's got to be Puny God? My secret cap.
Oh, right.
Like that, or like there's too many to point to.
One that's that was in the trailer, but if you didn't know it was coming, is such a good moment. Is right after the bit we're talking about when Iron Man's unconscious and falling back to Earth, and they're like, "Fuck, he's not slowing down. We need to stop him." And Thor starts to wind up his hammer, because that's how he flies. And then Hulk just fucking comes out of nowhere and catches him. It's such so because we.
It's good character development for Hulk.
Yeah, exactly. Well. Like, because the first time we see Hulk in the film, he's obviously unleashed without Banner kind of letting him, and he's his own character. Whereas we see in like at the end of the film that there is some of Banner in him, and because Banner and Stark's friendship is sort of incubated throughout the whole film, and throughout the whole final battle, Mark Ruffalo isn't there, Banner isn't there, and Tony Stark keeps on going, he's going to show up, I'm telling you, he's going to show up, and then he does, and he fucking saves his life. And it's an underrated moment, because I think it was spoiled in the trailer. It's just like, here's another shot of him grabbing him. But obviously Puny God as well, when Loki's threatening
the original Marvel undercut, the OG Marvel undercut. Do you want to explain it?
You go for it, mate.
So Loki's basically doing his thing during the Battle of New York, and then he gets like intercepted by the Hulk, who like smashes him into the Stark building, and before Hulk can go and beat him up, Loki gets to his feet and he goes, "Enough!" And do you know the line by heart, or try just approximate it? It's like he basically scolds Hulk. Yeah. He's like, he scolds Hulk, and he's like, You are acting. What he's basically saying is like, you are acting like you stand a chance against me, but I'm a fucking god. Like, I'm actually worth more than you, and you shouldn't. He doesn't go into it. This is the implication of what he's saying, right? So he's like, I am a god. How dare you? And then Hulk just grabs his foot and smashes him. It goes for too long, and that's the best part about it. It goes for so long, and just smashing him against the floor, and that's actually how Loki is defeated, because we don't see him in action after that.
Yeah, well, so he's lying in the ground, like, pummeled, and then he wakes up, and the Avengers are standing around him. Another
fantastic shot as well.
Yeah.
That moment... that moment was God, I actually love this movie, so I'm feeling very emotional. It's very hot in this room that I'm struggling to articulate it. Like, my favorite movies are movies where it's like there are small little moments where your dopamine spikes as you're watching it, you know? Yeah. Like those moments, especially in action movies, are like they're the currency of an action film, basically, is these dopamine strikes. And that moment is like one of the ones towards the end that was just so satisfying, and it's so funny, and I will concede that Marvel's maybe overdone it with that kind of setup and payoff, but there was just something so pure and wonderful about seeing someone who thinks they're as intellectual as Loki be beaten in such an immature and 100%. Easy way. It's such a funny way to be like, you actually are a puny god. Like, you actually are nothing. I love it so much. That was, I screeched with laughter when I watched that in the theaters.
And in the Lego Marvel Superheroes games, that's like, if you tap square enough times, close to a character, Hulk will do that move on them, and you get an achievement if you do it to Loki.
Nice. Is it called Puny God?
Yeah, it is. And I do want to talk about Loki a little bit more. Because this is what, obviously everyone's like, he's an amazing character. But so there's a couple of like mysteries, or like not even mysteries, but like things that have been either needlessly explained or are mysteries. So one is this, the line, everyone talks about this, the line that Joss Whedon snuck in to the Avengers. Do you know about this?
No, I don't.
So when he's, and this is another great scene as well, when Black Widow and Loki are facing off with each other, and he'd like fully, it's the first time we kind of see him like break his composure, and he's like, I'm going to get Hawkeye to kill you, and only when he's about to finish the job, I'm going to make him realize what he's doing.
Yeah, because Hawkeye's been hypnotized for the first half of the movie.
And he says, "You mewling quim." And do you know what that means?
No.
So it's essentially a fancy way of saying "you quivering cunt." Like it's a very derogatory term and very very fancy but vulgar word for female genitals.
Wow.
True. Yeah.
I want to not like Loki. I want to love to hate him.
Yeah, but it's pretty funny that
throw misogyny in there. It's the worst thing a villain can do.
Yeah, use the C word.
Yeah.
And another thing as well, and I didn't really think about this until I watched it the other night, but like right at the end when Loki's being taken back to Asgard and he's got this kind of like Bane-like mask on him.
Yeah.
And Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, leans over to Hawkeye and whispers something to him, and he laughs. What do you reckon she whispered?
That guy said he was going to make you kill me.
And he's like, look at him now. I like, because it seems like she's saying that like, it looks like he's got a ball gag in his mouth or something. like his laugh is very like.
Yeah. That's the second film in which Scarlett Johansson is involved in a whisper that no one knows what she said because it's lost in translation.
Because they've been asked about it and they're just like, oh, it's the same thing Bill Murray said in lost in translation. But the other thing, it like just came out in the last few months. That like on the official website like guide to the Avengers, it says like Loki under the influence of his scepter, because we later find out that Loki's scepter had the Mind Stone in it,
right? And
so Marvel's now made it canon that Loki isn't actually that bad of a guy. He was being influenced by his scepter to be more evil.
Which is kind of shit, but whatever. It might not come up in any real way.
Yeah.
I think they're doing that because obviously Loki's getting his own TV show, and with how he's kind of like one of the good guys kind of in Thor Ragnarok, I think they're trying to make a play for rectifying his character.
But yeah, no, I thought that was interesting. So I guess that's all we have to say about the Avengers. But as you know, we're not even fucking close to done. So, let's talk about titles. Okay. AJ, do you have anything you want to say about the titles?
We talk about titles a lot on this podcast, and here we go doing it again. Captain America: The First Avenger is the only one where it's like, and the first one as well, where it's like the character name subtitle. He's the only one who has a complete trilogy so far of character name subtitle.
Yeah, which I like. I like that they did it in this one.
Yeah, I like that too. I think I would have a problem with it if everything else was real consistent, but you've got things like The Incredible Hulk, or later you have Spider-Man Homecoming and things like that. So it's not... If every other movie except for Captain America First Avenger was like the character's name, I think it would annoy me, but it doesn't, I guess. One thing I've always thought, I saw this post on one of my many, many nerdy Facebook pages or groups a while ago, where someone was like, so you've got all the Thor movies and the Captain America movies, they're like the name of the character, then a subtitle for the sequels. If Iron Man followed this concept, what would Iron Man 2 and 3 be called? And they were saying, like, Iron Man 3 would probably be Iron Man Extremis, because that's the name of the thing in it. But I've always thought a real cool, and I sort of alluded to this before, a real cool title for Iron Man 2 would have been Iron Man Arms Race.
Yeah.
I reckon that would have suited, because no one says arms race in the film, but that's definitely what it's about. And I think that would have been a cool like explainer, or, you know, a cool moniker for that film to have. What do you think?
Well, I think because it introduces War Machine, it should have been like Iron Man, comma, TOO question mark. Like, I'm Iron Man. It's like, what, you're Iron Man too?
Iron Man 2, but it's TOO.
Yeah.
That's such a classic retired sequel title trope.
Yeah.
We need to bring back the TOO sequel title trope.
But yeah, no, I think that's a good one. Yeah, Arms Race is cool. Iron Man Extremis is cool. But then, like, would you want to do, like, just one, if you had to do a one-word title for Iron Man 2 to keep the pattern, what would you call it? Because like if the villain wasn't actually called Whiplash, that'd be a great title.
Yeah. Iron Man Whiplash. They don't say Whiplash in the film.
Yeah, true. But then it's like, oh, then the people will be like, oh, so the third one will be called Iron Man and Mandarin. Iron Mandarin.
Iron Man Mandarin. It's such an unthreatening word.
Yeah.
I just think of the fruit.
Yeah. What's a cool one word? Like whip crack, I guess. I don't know.
Whip crack.
Yeah.
Iron Man whip crack.
Iron Man. And then just the sound of it.
All right. So, Richard, we put out a post on our social media, our socials, asking people what their favourite scenes or moments from Marvel Phase 1 was. And I'd love to read you some of our responses that week.
Oh my gosh, dude. I would love to hear them.
All right, so Joel Tempero says Tony's line in Iron Man 1 when he's talking to Pepper. He says, I shouldn't be alive unless it was for a reason. Probably not a big deal at the time, but a massive deal now. Yikes. What do you think of that?
Oh, I mean, if that's not my favourite moment, I don't know what is.
Well, how could I recommend another one to you?
Yes.
Scott Curry says, I still remember seeing Iron Man in the cinema and being totally shocked by the very end. In the press conference when he publicly revealed his superhero identity. It seems like a tiny thing now. I guess the same thing that Joel said. Seems like a tiny thing now, but at the time, or the opposite actually, it felt like it violated some fundamental rule of how superhero movies are meant to work. I remember feeling the same thing.
Yeah, but I feel like you would have been like, they can't do that.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't care. I just thought it was interesting, or at least it was a cool statement for Marvel to make on going forward in this series that, like, this isn't a superhero series about secret identities.
Yeah.
You know, it's not at the time Sony's Spider-Man. It's not at the time Batman. You know, like, this is different.
It's like
this
your mama's superhero movie.
Yeah, this is a universe where
it's
Elon
your dad's
Musk is a
superhero
movie.
movie.
Scott Dorr says, as much as I love Iron Man 1, I think the best scene is the grenade dive scene from Captain America the First Avenger. This is I've seen this mentioned a few times, like, on the internet, that people love this. Taylor Wilson says, perfect way to set up Selfless Steve. I agree.
Yep, 100%. It's great. And also another cool thing about that moment is you see Peggy runs for it as well, but is stopped because it's a test. So it just goes to show how pure of heart Peggy is as well.
Yeah. David Draper says, when Robert Downey Jr. eats the second cheeseburger in Iron Man, if that doesn't make you want a cheeseburger, then Kevin Feige hasn't done his job right. That's what he's here for, right?
And you know the story behind that cheeseburger as well, yeah?
I don't. Tell me the story.
Robert Downey Jr., he had some pretty public problems with drugs, I think it's fair to say. And he was at, like, his lowest point, and he was, you know, drug fucked out of his mind, and he was eating this greasy, disgusting cheeseburger from Burger King, and he was like, I can't believe I'm putting this in my body, like, this is the lowest I've ever felt. And that was when he, like, threw all his drugs into the river and decided to get clean. And so it was like this big, you know, religious experience for him eating that cheeseburger. And so that's why they put it into the film.
That's really cool. It serves the opposite purpose in
the
film, but
it is like, a cheeseburger signifying a greater moment for him, or like a change in his personality.
Ben Close says one of my favourite moments is probably when
that big fat liar.
Well, we'll get to it. Don't fucking usurp his joke.
Tough shit, Ben.
One of my favourite moments is probably when Steve paralyzes Tony and mentions that he ordered the assassination. You can really see it in Robert Downey Jr.'s eyes, how badly he felt betrayed when it turned out his longtime best friend and business partner was nothing but a big fat liar.
Oh, good one. I wonder if that's actually his favourite moment, or if he just like scoured phase 1 for a moment that he could turn into big fat liar.
I do like that moment, though. I think that's a good description of it. It's a good description of a scene in a movie.
Yeah,
what
sure.
What are you going to do? All right, over on Instagram, we've got a couple of responses as well. Chris Murray Custom Shop says, I'm a sucker for the MKV suit up in Iron Man 2. Not the strongest movie or suit in the phase, but dang, what a moment.
Mark 5, I believe that is.
I said Mark V.
You said MKV.
MK Ultra.
Yeah, Mark 5 suit. That's the one, the suitcase suit up.
It's cool. And now we've got like nanobots in lasers.
Yeah, it's like Mark 47.
It's very emblematic of how pop culture likes to portray technology.
Yeah.
Because pop culture is always like a few steps ahead of what technology actually is at the time. And so in 2010, it was like, yeah, there's a suitcase with an Iron Man suit in it. In 2018, it's just nanobots now. Just comes over.
But yeah, I mean, we'll get to it more next week. But yeah, how they were like, oh, Iron Man's got like, he's up to like 5 or 6, and then it was like leaked like images, first image from Iron Man 3 of him in his like Mark 42 armor, and it's like Jesus Christ.
Connor Watson says, literally when Iron Man fire a little rocket in the first film and walks away and blows up the tank.
Like literally?
Literally that. I mean, but I think what he means, why he said literally, is like, yeah, that's the money shot, the cheesy money shot, but like, that's why. It's because it's a really good.
Yeah, it is. It is very cool.
It's very classic moment. And the last comment we have is from Cal L52, who says, Thor's hammer versus Cap's shield leveling a forest in the Avengers.
Yeah, that is a cool moment. And it also has that, like, in that moment, the fight between the three of them, you have the moment where Thor shocks Tony, and he says, and then Jarvis is like, oh, charged to 400%, and then he's real powerful. And he's like, how about that? And it's not brought up again in the final fight, and it's a massive unfired Chekhov's gun, if you ask me, but maybe it'll be fired in Endgame.
All right. Sweet. Well, let's get back to our discussion instead of other people's discussions.
Fuck off, fans. This year, we're trying out a little thing called #AskEveryone2019, where
hell yeah.
We like doing interviews on this poddy, so we're trying to do more of them. And the way we've done our ones up until now is just randomly messaging people out of the blue that tweeting at people that are involved in some way in the franchise we've been covering. So I have tweeted someone. I have interacted with this person before. I can't remember what I said, but it was just like hey, does anyone else think this? And I was like, yeah, totally. And they liked the tweet. And
holy shit.
So that's Zach Stentz, who is the screenwriter behind Thor, or one of them, and he also is the guy behind X-Men First Class. So 2 franchises we've covered. And so we tweeted at him, said, would you be keen for an interview? And he said, okay. And then I said, how do we get in touch? So that's where we're at with that.
Stay tuned, everybody. That'll be exciting. Hopefully, we just need to get him on another time when he's online.
Yeah.
Like, what's your email address or whatever?
Yeah.
Follow us, DM us. Yeah. So hopefully that'll happen. Stay tuned for that. If that happens, if it does happen, might not happen.
And if it doesn't happen, you can stop tuning in.
Yeah.
You have my permission. Once this interview prospects are in ashes, then you have my permission to stop listening.
Stopping listening isn't something one considers when destroying the universe. I couldn't make the metaphor work the whole way to the end of the quote.
Yeah.
This cancelled listenership extracts a heavy toll.
That's my secret, Cab. I never listen to your podcast. See, that one's funny because it's something one of your friends would actually tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about what most or all of these films have is two things. One is a cameo from the dearly departed Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel Comics. Well, not the creator of Marvel Comics, but and
nerd alert sirens go off everywhere. Someone just said Stan Lee was the creator of Marvel Comics.
And they also have post-credit scenes. So, I don't know if should we rank them or should we just go through what we kind of like a quick top, middle, or bottom of each of them?
Yeah.
So let's go through the post-credit scenes. So I'm including the one from Incredible Hulk, even though it's not technically one. So across these 6 films, there's 7 post-credit scenes or mid-credit scenes as well. So Iron Man's one is when Nick Fury shows up and says, "I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative."
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is still the best one. Like,
right.
In terms of what a post-credit scene is supposed to do and how it made me feel when I first saw it, this is like unbeaten.
Do you know, I don't think I even knew the post-credit scenes existed until like Iron Man 3.
Yeah, it's real
I'd
weird.
never seen any
I
of them.
don't remember if I knew exactly what it was or like what, but I remember staying and seeing it and being like, "Oh,
actually, you know what? I'd seen the Avengers one, so I guess I did know to some degree."
What do you reckon about this one?
Yeah, of course. Like, of course, it's the best one.
Yeah,
it's the promise. It's the giddy promise that you in 2008 you couldn't believe they'd actually live up to in such a satisfying way.
And so, Incredible Hulk, you've got Stark showing up and meeting Thunderbolt Ross, and it's weird. Like, I don't remember if at the time I knew that those two films were connected. I think I probably did because I remember reading scouring the Wikipedia pages for all these things, and so I don't know how surprised I was by the idea of Stark showing up in it, and also because I remember at the very start of the film you see Stark Industries logo, and I remember being like to my mates, guys, it's fucking Iron Man.
Right. Yeah. I think this is an underrated post-credit scene because
it's not a post-credit scene.
Yeah, is that too? But it is also like the first time the films cross over in like a big way. But in terms of what it is, it's not too interesting. It's not too exciting.
But it's interesting that it has a new meaning now as well.
Yeah. That kind of bumps it up actually.
It's quite funny. So then Iron Man 2, we have near the end of Iron Man 2, Coulson says that he's got a new thing to go do in New Mexico, and then we see him find Mjolnir. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, in a way it's good because it's like when you have 3 movies and 2 of them are the same character, it's cool to be like, there's another one coming out. Like, we're introducing a new character now.
I do like that. To me, this is like another like really good example of what a post-credit scene should be. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you're gonna stay to the end, it's a tease that like you'll get if you're into the comics and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's also, it's not necessary. It's, it's you don't need to see it to understand Iron Man 2 or to understand Thor, but it's a fun little tease.
Yeah, it must be the cheapest of all the post-credit scenes as well. Eh?
Well, I mean, I think it's just a slightly different shot scene from Thor.
Yeah, so exactly. And like you've got the only actor you've got is Phil Coulson, so it's not like you've got to scramble.
You have to fucking make this big crater.
Yeah, true, good point.
And then Thor, you have Selvig. It's revealed that Loki's still alive, and Selvig is shown the Tesseract, and presumably Selvig is under Loki's control or influence, at least at this point.
Yeah, and Samuel Jackson's in that scene. Samuel Jackson's as well. In it, yeah. I don't think I'd ever seen this scene before. I think watching it this time was the first time I saw it. And for that, it gets points because it was something new. But it's nothing too special, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then Captain America has undeniably the worst one. I mean, it was the first trailer for the Avengers, which at the time was pretty cool. But I mean, I didn't see it.
It pisses me off because it's like, It's now
Just
the
leave it
only
off the
post credit
DVD,
scene. Yeah, it's now the only post credit scene that has that as a post credit scene in the whole series. The one thing I did like about the trailer though is that it touts the tagline as "some assembly required," which is such a fucking funny tagline for the Avengers. Like, I get that Avengers Assemble is a thing, but like, that's a phrase you associate with like toys. Like, it's such a funny thing to say.
That's great.
It's one of those Legally Blonde things where it's a pun that only works one way and not two ways. Like, they're not also toys as well as superheroes that need assembly.
Yeah. So that's the worst one. We're agreeing.
Yeah.
And then, so the Avengers had introduced the mid-credit scene, and so that had the first one, which is the Other, who we've seen is the one that sort of Loki is reporting directly to.
The Chitauri.
He's the sort of head Chitauri guy. And then we see who he answers to, and he says to pursue them would be to court death. And then we see our old purple mate Thanos.
First Thanos in the series.
Yep. Turn and look to the camera and smile.
I remember seeing that in the theaters, and then going home and looking up and reading the name Thanos for the first time.
Yep.
It was a fun little special memory I have.
But it's interesting about that, and I guess we'll talk about this more when we get to Infinity War, but this teases a more comic book accurate Thanos as well.
Yeah.
And the little post credits style tease for part 3 of this conversation. And then the Avengers has a second one at the end of the credits, which is the main 6 all sitting around eating shawarma, which is mentioned earlier on in the film. And the fun fact about this one, it was filmed after the premiere of the film. So they premiered the film, went and shot this, and then stuck it on copies of it. And I remember it actually wasn't in, when I saw it in the cinemas for the first time, because I think I saw it twice, this wasn't in it. We stayed to the end of the credits and it wasn't there because New Zealand gets the film like 3 or 4 days earlier than the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, I think that doesn't do anything, but it's so funny.
It's great. Yeah, I love this one. This is for different reasons. These like my top 2 is Iron Man and the Avengers.
Yeah, no, I agree, because it's like one of the only times you see them all be casual together.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's like, it's one thing I love about these films is that they're not, and a lot of people shit on them, especially DC fans. Is that DC takes itself, well, it has up until this point, up until 2 weeks ago when Shazam came out. But they take themselves very seriously, whereas they're not afraid to like meme and and just add this kind of shit that's like a bit like silly and a bit fun.
The sick "what are those" joke in Black Panther.
Yeah. This is a really fun thing, and the fact that they just like kind of did it. And also you'll notice that Chris Evans has his hand up to his face the whole time because he'd grown a beard for another role. I
was going to say it's not him, is it? But it was him.
Yeah, no, he'd grown a beard, so his face is like, he had like skin over it, I think, but he's like holding it because it looks real fucking weird. Yeah. All right, now on to the Stan Lee cameos. Woohoo! So some of these are really quick in these ones, though. Yeah. But let's talk about what we think of these. So in the first Iron Man, he's mistaken for Hugh Hefner.
Is he I thought he just was Hugh Hefner.
No, it's like he's mistaken for Hugh Hefner, according to this.
Right.
So it's quite a fun little cameo.
Yeah. And
then the Incredible Hulk, I remember this being referred to as like his most important cameo yet.
Sure.
Because he drinks the contaminated soda and presumably turns into the Hulk. Like, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if he has enough to turn into the Hulk. It says that he has gamma poisoning.
Yeah. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
And then in Iron Man 2, again, he's mistaken for Larry King this time.
It's so funny.
Yeah. And it's like, what, like 13 frames long as well? It's so quick in this one. And then in Thor, he plays a truck driver, one of the ones that's trying to get Mjolnir out of the crater.
What is it? He's like, did it work?
Yeah.
That might be my favorite one. I think comedically that's the best one so far.
Yeah. And then Captain America, the first Avenger, when Captain America is meant to be appearing somewhere, and someone else walks out, and he's like a veteran who's like, I thought he'd be taller.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's all right.
And then finally in the Avengers, at the end, it's like a montage of everyone loving the Avengers and people cutting their goatee to look like Tony Stark. And he's playing a game of chess and he's like, superheroes in New York? Give me a break.
Oh, it's so wholesome.
It is great, eh? And in the Lego Marvel Superheroes game, that's like one of the sound bites that passers-by say. So there's like all like the same 15 phrases you hear every 3 or 4 minutes. And so that's superheroes in New York. Give me a break. That's good. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Nice.
So we've reached the end, my friend. We're in the end game now because it's time to continue the franchise. So Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 has been continued already.
What do you mean?
Yeah, with another 15 films so far.
My God.
At least 2 on the way.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a strange one to continue. And Phase 2 is going to be even harder to continue. But do you ever continue the franchise?
Yeah, so the way I kind of looked at it, I was like, how do you continue Phase 1 if that's the rule, right? So I figure the obvious answer is to do an Incredible Hulk sequel.
Yep.
And I know that it's all wrapped up in legal disputes and stuff, so they can't do it. But first of all, I would love to see the leader on film as a character. I would love to see Mark Ruffalo carry his own movie, and maybe you give him who do they always pair him with in interviews? Don Cheadle.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe give him Rhodey as the.
It's funny how there's these pairs made, like in the real world that we're like, I want to see it on film.
But what I would actually be real interested to see is a series of Hulk films, like because people were talking about how like before Thor Ragnarok came out, people thought it was going to be the Planet Hulk storyline.
Yeah, World War Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah, World War Hulk. And I think that definitely is a way to go with it. I think after Thor Ragnarok, it's probably too late to do that now, though. Title-wise, I could get behind The Incredible Hulk, Planet Hulk, World War Hulk as film titles. I think that'd be cool. But what I'm kind of more interested in is seeing Red Hulk or Grey Hulk on screen as well. And people have talked about Everett Ross, who is played by Martin Freeman, being like the backdoor Red Hulk. I'd be very down for that.
Yeah, because it's Thunderbolt Ross in the comics, yeah?
Yeah. Which I don't really want to see William Hurt as. I don't want to see William Hurt.
Yeah, William Hurt's real weird because he's.
I was making a pun. I wasn't making a judgment.
No, but
I would hate to see William Hurt.
William Hurt for a second. So I only really know him from the MCU, and I was like, oh, yeah, I know what he looks like. And then I watched History of Violence, which I was like, oh, William Hurt's in this. And then I was like, oh, he's Thunderbolt Ross, yeah. And then I watched the whole movie and I was like, where was he? And then I realized he looks so different without like the not long hair, but like that crew cut and a moustache.
Yeah.
He's a weird looking dude.
So it'd be cool to do like the alternate Hulk series. So you Red Hulk, Grey Hulk, She-Hulk, like...
Yeah, She-Hulk's a good character.
Explore the characters, and maybe that's more something for a Disney Plus show than movies, but I'd love to see it in done in movies.
Yeah.
So that's my continue the franchise.
What's the like Professor Hulk or something?
Yeah, Professor Hulk. Yeah, where he's smart.
Yeah.
And I think there's one of them where it's like he's only Hulk in the dark, so he wears a. Sorry, I'm moving away from the microphone. He's only Hulk in the dark, so that he wears a fedora so that the sunlight can't hit him.
There used to be a She-Hulk animated series that I remember watching and quite liking.
She was a character in the Incredible Hulk animated series. I don't know if she had her own one.
Right, yeah. I just remember seeing her. Anyway, my continue the franchise for this is a video game. There is the Square Enix Avengers project in development, which was announced 2 years ago, and we haven't really had any updates on.
Been a long time since then. Yeah.
But especially with the success of the Spider-Man PS4 game, it's insane to me that I think Captain America: the First Avenger was the last movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to get a video game tie-in. They don't really make video game tie-ins anymore. Yeah. No. They're not really a thing. But I loved the Incredible Hulk video game tie-in. Just a side note.
I didn't even know it existed.
I always got it out when we went to my friend's house, and he fucking got so sick of it. Like every time we'd go to the video store, I'd be like, "Oh, let's get this." He'd be like, "No, fucking like." I just loved because you could you could do that move where you like just stamp the pavement and this big rock comes up, so you can like hit people with it, and then you can like split it into two and basically use them as bigger fists.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm gonna see if I can get this game, but it was so like set in the world of the Avengers, because also the Lego Marvel Superheroes, which I've mentioned a few times, is such a good game. It's like an open world sandbox game, but you're Lego and you're the Avengers. It's like, just make a good graphics, photorealistic version of that.
Yeah, the worst thing about that game is that you're Lego. So that's the one part of it you can't take seriously.
Yeah.
Like if that was just real Avengers characters models, that'd be such an interesting. That'd be so much more like a bigger cultural phenomenon than the Lego version was.
Yeah. But then, because the first game has all the Fox and Sony characters in it as well, and the second game is just MCU or characters owned by Disney, which is, it's not as good, and I haven't even finished it, but I've like platinumed the first one twice.
I watched you play a lot of it when we flattered together, and one of the main things I remember about it was how good the idle music was.
Yeah, man.
Like it sounded like something that would belong in like The Last of Us as opposed to Lego Marvel superheroes.
Yeah. But it's such a like unabashedly fun game.
Yeah.
And fuck it, just do that again. Like literally just someone mod Lego Marvel superheroes with the like actual like character
That's your
models.
continue the franchise? Just a hack for a game?
Yeah.
A patch?
Yeah. So that's my continue the franchise.
Very good. Well Richard, is that it? How long is this?
So this is like 2.5 hours?
Yeah, about that.
And that's our review of The Mule, starring Clint Eastwood. Sorry we went on a massive tangent.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, then please be sure to subscribe to us all over the show. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon. You can find us on Patreon as well. And you can also email us at copoptionmedia@gmail.com. Next week, it's Phase 2. Week after that, it's Phase 3 plus Infinity
Game.
End War.
So next week's probably going to be about the same length because we've got the same amount of films to talk about. And then the following week is probably going to be twice as long. Plus, I imagine our conversation about Endgame is going to go for a fuck of a lot longer because it'll be fresh.
Do you think next week's episode might be shorter than this week's because we won't talk about The Mule for so long?
We'll talk about the other Clint Eastwood films I will have watched between now and recording.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you later next time on Cult Pop. Sure.
Haven't done this in a while.
Sweet. Okay, dude. You stop recording?
Yep.
Cool.
Cool. Oh, that was a pretty good one.
Yeah. Hey, who's that? Is that world famous New Zealand comedian Tim Batt from the Worst Idea of All Time podcast?
AJ, Richard, I'm here to talk about the Little Empire Podcast Network.